Hello, wonderful people. Welcome to Dark Harry, your story destination. We have an absolute treat for you today. What if Wednesday Addams taught Harry ancient curses and they hunted Voldemort for fun? Dark Duo, if you're enjoying these stories, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support keeps the stories coming. With that said, let the adventure begin. Chapter 1, Delightfully Deadly Beginnings. Harry's breath came out in rapid puffs of white vapor as he trudged through the fog-laden cemetery. His detection spell pulsed stronger now, vibrating against his palm like an excited heartbeat. "Come on," he muttered, squinting at the strange magical signature he'd been tracking for 3 days. It wasn't a Horcrux, not exactly, but something about its dark energy signature resonated with the fragments of Voldemort's soul he'd encountered before. The trail led him to an imposing wrought iron gate crowned with spikes that looked suspiciously like they'd been fashioned from human femurs. Beyond stood a decrepit Victorian mansion that seemed to defy several laws of physics. Turrets spiraled at impossible angles, and chimneys belched smoke that formed skull-shaped clouds. Definitely not suspicious at all, Harry said to himself, pushing the gate. It swung open with an ominous creak that sounded almost deliberately theatrical. The moment his foot touched the property, the ground beneath him vanished. Harry dropped into darkness, only years of Quidditch reflexes saving him as he cast a hasty levitation charm. Suspended mid-air, he illuminated his wand to reveal a pit of wickedly sharp spikes below. "Not bad," he admitted, directing himself towards solid ground. "Bit obvious though." As if the house heard him, a volley of crossbow bolts shot from the mansion's facade. Harry ducked, twisted, and deflected them with a shield charm, but one grazed his shoulder, leaving a stinging cut. "Okay, less obvious." Point taken. He approached more carefully now, wand at the ready, senses hyperalert. The front door swung open before he could touch it. Inside, the entrance hall stretched impossibly large, decorated with mounted creature heads Harry couldn't identify and portraits whose eyes followed him with unmistakable hunger. "Hello," he called out. "I'm not looking for trouble. I'm tracking a magical signature." A chandelier above him crashed down without warning. Harry leapt sideways, barely avoiding being crushed, only to trigger another trap, the floorboards beneath him splintering to reveal a bubbling vat of something green and caustic. "Protego," he shouted, forming a shield that bridged the gap as he scrambled across. "You're still alive," came a flat, unimpressed voice from the shadows. "How disappointingly competent of you." A pale girl about his age stepped into view, wearing a black dress with white collar and cuffs that looked like it belonged in another century. Her black hair was braided into 2 severe plaits, and her expression suggested she found everything in existence mildly annoying. "Most visitors don't make it past the quicksand in the rose garden," she continued. "The ones who do usually lose at least a limb to the Venus mantraps." Harry lowered his wand slightly but kept it ready. "I must have come in the back way." "The cemetery entrance?" Her eyebrow raised fractionally. "That's actually the most dangerous approach. The guillotine blades in the topiary maze usually get everyone." "I'm Harry Potter," he said, deciding directness was his best option. "And you are?" "Wednesday Addams." She studied him without blinking. "The boy who lived. How thoroughly ordinary you appear in person." "Thanks," Harry said dryly. "Look, I'm tracking a magical signature similar to something I need to destroy. It led me here." Wednesday tilted her head. "You mean the cursed amulet Great-Aunt Calpurnia brought back from Romania? It keeps trying to possess houseguests. Father finds it amusing during dinner parties." Harry stared at her. "You know it's cursed and you just keep it around." "Of course." Wednesday's lips curled slightly. "We're the Addams family. We collect cursed artifacts the way other people collect commemorative plates." Harry ran a hand through his already disheveled hair. "I need to see it. It might be connected to Voldemort. The noseless wizard terrorist." Wednesday's interest visibly sparked. The one trying to conquer Britain with his band of mask-wearing sycophants? That's, actually a pretty accurate description, Harry admitted. Follow me. Wednesday turned abruptly. Try not to die. The bloodstains take forever to remove from the Persian rugs. Harry followed her through the bizarre house, dodging a swinging axe, a trap door, and what looked suspiciously like a hungry carnivorous plant. Wednesday navigated each danger without looking, occasionally commenting when Harry narrowly avoided death. Good reflexes, she noted as he sidestepped a suit of armor that tried to skewer him. Most people panic when Sir Stabsalot activates. They entered a cavernous library filled with ancient tomes and jars containing specimens Harry preferred not to examine closely. Wednesday opened a cabinet and removed a tarnished silver amulet emitting a faint reddish glow. Here it is. We call it the Weeping Heart. Legend says it contains the tears of a Romanian vampire lord who was forced to destroy his own progeny. Harry cast a detection spell, watching as tendrils of magic revealed the amulet's properties. It's not what I'm looking for, but the magical signature is similar. Dark magic with a connection to souls and death. Wednesday's eyes narrowed. What exactly are you hunting? Harry hesitated, then decided honesty might be his best approach. Pieces of Voldemort's soul that he stored in objects. Horcruxes. I need to destroy them all before I can kill him. Soul fragments. For the first time, Wednesday looked genuinely intrigued. How delightfully macabre. And you're tracking these alone? Where's your army of light wizards? Harry's expression hardened. They're busy protecting people. This is my responsibility. And they sent you with what? That stick. She nodded at his wand dismissively. I've been trained, in schoolyard hexes and defense against creatures even my 7-year-old cousin could handle, Wednesday interrupted. Tell me, Harry Potter, what do you know about blood curses? Soul maledictions? The ancient arts of flesh and bone? Harry's silence was answer enough. As I suspected. Wednesday replaced the amulet and pulled down a massive, leather-bound tome that seemed to breathe. Your so-called leaders sent you to fight ancient dark magic with parlor tricks. I've managed so far, Harry said defensively. Wednesday opened the book, releasing a faint wail from its pages. You've survived by luck and the sacrifice of others. I can smell death on you, not your own, but those who died protecting you. The accusation stung because it held truth. What's your point? My point is that you're hunting a dark wizard with fragmented immortality using spells taught to children. A rare smile crossed Wednesday's face, sharp as a razor. I could teach you real magic. The kind your teachers fear to mention. The kind that would actually give you a chance. Harry stared at the strange girl, weighing her offer against his desperation. Why would you help me? Help? Wednesday looked almost offended. I'm bored, Potter. Teaching the chosen one forbidden curses sounds entertaining. Watching you hunt a self-proclaimed Dark Lord using Addams family magic. Her eyes gleamed. That would be worth the effort. Harry knew he should refuse. This girl and her house radiated dark magic. But months of fruitless searching, of near misses and losses, had worn him down. Dumbledore had left him with a mission but inadequate tools to complete it. What kind of magic are we talking about? Wednesday pulled another book from the shelf, this one bound in what looked distressingly like human skin. Magic that doesn't concern itself with silly distinctions between dark and light. Magic that gets results. She flipped it open to a page showing a curse that made Harry's stomach turn. Magic that will make your enemy regret his immortality. I'm not becoming a dark wizard, Harry said firmly. No one's asking you to, Wednesday replied. I'm offering to teach you magic your enemy won't expect or understand. Magic that predates his ancestors. She closed the book with a snap. But if you prefer to continue your scavenger hunt with elementary spells, by all means, the door is that way. Mind the trapdoor with the alligator pit. Harry took a deep breath. Show me one spell. Something useful that won't corrupt me or require sacrificing puppies. Wednesday's lips twitched. Puppies are terrible components. Far too much innocence, not enough malice. She flipped through the book again and stopped on a page. Here. The Ghostfire Curse. It burns only what the caster intends, ignores shields, and can't be extinguished by conventional means. She demonstrated with a casual flick of her wrist. Blue-white flames erupted around a nearby chair, consuming it without heat or smoke until only ash remained. That could be useful, Harry admitted, impressed despite himself. That's kindergarten level for an Addams, Wednesday said. I learned that before I could ride a bicycle. Did your bicycle have poison spikes on the handlebars? Of course not. Wednesday looked offended. The poison was in the seat. The handlebars had retractable blades. Harry couldn't help laughing, which earned him a suspicious look from Wednesday. So, she said, closing the book. Do you want to learn how to hunt dark wizards properly, or do you want to continue with your tickling charms and disarming spells? Harry knew he was crossing a line, one Dumbledore might never forgive him for. But Dumbledore was gone, and Harry was tired of fighting with one hand tied behind his back. Teach me, he said. But I have conditions. No innocent victims, no permanent damage to my soul, and nothing Voldemort would do. How disappointingly ethical, Wednesday sighed. Very well. We'll start with the less morally objectionable curses. Meet me in the family graveyard at midnight. Why the graveyard? Wednesday gave him a look that suggested he'd asked why water was wet. Because magic is stronger where the veil between life and death is thinnest, obviously. She turned and walked away. Don't be late. And bring something to write with. There will be pop quizzes. The Addams family graveyard made the one at Little Hangleton look like a cheerful park. Mist clung to ancient tombstones carved with grim reapers and weeping angels. Statues that looked distressingly lifelike stood frozen mid-scream, and Harry was certain he saw movement from the corner of his eye whenever he turned his head. Wednesday waited beside an open grave, holding a lantern that cast more shadows than light. She'd changed into what appeared to be funeral attire complete with a black veil, which she flipped back when she saw him. You're 2 minutes early, she said, sounding faintly disappointed. I was looking forward to demonstrating the consequences of tardiness. Sorry to ruin your fun, Harry replied, stepping carefully around a patch of soil that seemed to be breathing. What's first? Theory. Wednesday handed him a small black book. The Basics of Intent-Based Magic. Read the first chapter while I prepare the circle. Harry opened the book, which bore the cheerful title, Suffering Made Simple, A Beginner's Guide to Causing Agony. The first chapter, however, was surprisingly insightful about the relationship between intent and magical effect, concepts Hogwarts had never explicitly taught. Meanwhile, Wednesday methodically placed candles and objects at points around the grave, occasionally consulting a larger tome. By the time Harry finished reading, she had created an elaborate ritual circle that pulsed with latent power. Finished? She asked. Good. The first lesson is about recognizing the difference between pain and damage. She pointed to the circle. Step inside. Harry hesitated. What's going to happen? You're going to experience pain without harm, Wednesday said matter-of-factly. You can't inflict what you don't understand. And I should trust you because. You shouldn't, she replied. That's the second lesson. But if I wanted to harm you, the poison tea at the house would have been more efficient. Harry blinked. You gave me poison tea. No. That's my point. I had ample opportunity but didn't take it. She gestured impatiently. The circle, Potter. Unless you've reconsidered your quest for adequate training. With a deep breath, Harry stepped into the circle. Immediately, every nerve in his body ignited with pain, not the sharp, focused agony of cruciatus, but a deep, resonant suffering that seemed to vibrate through his very bones. Yet somehow, he knew it wasn't causing damage. After 10 seconds that felt like hours, Wednesday broke the circle, and the pain vanished without lingering effects. What, Harry gasped, was that? Pain separated from harm, Wednesday explained, scuffing out part of the circle with her boot. The essence of what makes many dark curses different from their light counterparts. Light magic ties effect to intent. Your stunning spell works because you want someone unconscious. Many dark curses separate the components. You can cause pain without damage, damage without pain, or combine them in different proportions. She handed him a different book. This contains the incantation and wand movement for the Phantom Agony curse. It causes pain similar to what you just felt but focused wherever you direct it. Unlike Cruciatus, it doesn't require you to genuinely desire someone's suffering, only precise magical control. Harry studied the spell, which looked deceptively simple. And this helps me how? I'm not looking to torture Death Eaters. Spoken like someone who's never had to extract information quickly, Wednesday remarked. But more importantly, understanding this principle is essential for the protective spells you'll learn next. Pain barriers that repel attackers without requiring constant maintenance. Traps that incapacitate without killing. Over the next several hours, Wednesday demonstrated curses and counter-curses Harry had never imagined. Some were disturbing, others ingenious. All were effective. She was a demanding teacher, criticizing his technique relentlessly and occasionally subjecting him to the effects of his improperly cast spells. Your intent wavers, she said after his third failed attempt at a flesh-binding curse. You're still thinking about whether the spell is good or evil. Magic doesn't care about morality, Potter. It cares about will and precision. Easy for you to say, Harry shot back, frustration mounting. You grew up with this. I was taught that dark magic corrupts the caster. Wednesday rolled her eyes. A convenient fiction taught by those who fear power they don't understand. Magic reflects the caster, Potter. It amplifies what's already there. She pointed to a nearby grave. Try again. Imagine the bones beneath that soil binding together, reforming connections they once had. Harry focused, pushing aside his reservations and concentrating purely on the effect he wanted. This time, when he cast the spell, the ground trembled, and they both felt the magic take hold. Better, Wednesday said, something almost like approval in her voice. Now, the true test. We need a practical application. What did you have in mind? Wednesday's smile was unsettling. There's a pack of ghouls that's been terrorizing the marsh beyond our property. Not the harmless magical kind your ministry classifies. The flesh-eating variety that my family usually considers charming neighbors. Recently, however, they've become bothersome. We can practice on them. You want to test combat spells on ghouls? Unless you'd prefer to practice on actual Death Eaters without preparation, Wednesday replied. I assumed you'd want a trial run before facing enemies who can cast killing curses. She had a point. Fine. Ghouls it is. The marsh stretched eerily under the moonlight, mist swirling around twisted trees. Somewhere in the distance, something howled, a sound that raised the hair on Harry's neck. Remember, Wednesday whispered as they navigated through sucking mud, ghouls hunt by sound and smell. They're resistant to most conventional spells. Use what I taught you. Harry nodded, keeping his wand ready. The spells Wednesday had shown him kept replaying in his mind, the Ghostfire Curse, the Bone-Breaking Hex, the Phantom Agony, the Flesh-Binding Curse. A twig snapped somewhere to their left. Then another to their right. We're surrounded, Harry murmured. Wednesday looked pleased rather than concerned. Good. More targets. The first ghoul lunged from the shadows, a grotesque, emaciated thing with too many teeth and elongated limbs. Harry reacted on instinct, casting the Ghostfire Curse. Blue-white flames engulfed the creature, which shrieked and thrashed but couldn't extinguish the magical fire. Two more attacked from behind. Wednesday dispatched one with a casual flick of her wrist, causing it to collapse as every bone in its body seemingly liquefied. Harry caught the second with the flesh-binding curse, watching in grim satisfaction as its limbs contorted and locked, rendering it immobile. "On your left," Wednesday called. Harry spun and faced the largest ghoul yet, nearly 7 feet tall with claws like daggers. He tried the bone-breaking hex, but the creature only staggered before continuing its charge. "Intent, Potter!" Wednesday shouted, engaged with 2 ghouls herself. "Mean it." Harry focused everything on his next spell, channeling all his frustration, fear, and determination. "Aussies fractum," he roared. The effect was immediate and gruesome. Every bone in the ghoul's body shattered simultaneously. It collapsed into a writhing heap of flesh, no longer recognizable as a humanoid form. For a moment, Harry felt sick at what he'd done. Then he remembered these creatures had been killing and eating people, and his resolve hardened. The remaining ghouls retreated, apparently deciding the prey wasn't worth the cost. Wednesday watched them flee with an expression of mild disappointment. "I was hoping for a few more," she said. "You need the practice." Harry wiped sweat from his forehead, feeling the adrenaline slowly subside. "That was effective." "Of course it was," Wednesday replied. "That's the entire point. Your conventional magic is like bringing a butter knife to an artillery fight." She surveyed the defeated ghouls with clinical interest. "Not bad for your first attempt. The bone curse was particularly well executed on your second try." "Thanks," Harry said, not entirely sure how to feel about the compliment. "So what now?" "Now," Wednesday said, "we move on to the interesting spells." She pulled a small book from her pocket. "This contains tracking curses that can find someone through blood connections, possessions, or even memories. If your Dark Lord has followers, we can use them to find him." Harry's eyes widened. "You can track Death Eaters through the Dark Mark." "Better than that," Wednesday replied. "I can make the mark itself become a beacon that draws us to them, regardless of their protective enchantments." She tucked the book away. "But first, you need rest. Even Addams' magic requires proper recovery time. We'll continue tomorrow." As they walked back toward the mansion, Harry found himself reassessing everything he thought he knew about magic. Wednesday's spells were undeniably dark by conventional standards, yet they were also undeniably effective. And while some made him uncomfortable, none had required him to surrender his humanity or moral code. "Why are you really helping me?" he asked as they reached the cemetery gate. Wednesday considered him for a long moment. "Entertainment value, primarily. Watching the so-called chosen one learn Addams' family curses is novel. Additionally, your Dark Lord sounds tedious, all megalomania and genocide. No style, no appreciation for the artistry of darkness." She shrugged slightly. "The Addams family has always preferred a more elegant approach to the macabre." Harry suspected there was more to it but decided not to push. "Well, whatever your reasons, I appreciate it. Don't get sentimental, Potter," Wednesday warned. "I might reconsider the whole arrangement." Despite her words, Harry caught the faintest hint of amusement in her eyes. Perhaps the grim Wednesday Addams wasn't entirely immune to human connection after all. 3 weeks passed in a blur of increasingly advanced lessons. Harry mastered curses that could track targets through seemingly impenetrable protections, hexes that bypassed conventional shields, and protective enchantments that made the user temporarily immune to most magical attacks. Wednesday proved to be a demanding but effective teacher, never accepting less than perfection and demonstrating each spell with effortless precision. She seemed genuinely impressed by Harry's rapid progress, though she'd rather face the ghouls again than admit it directly. "Your magical core is adapting well," she noted during their 4th week of training. "Most wizards would have experienced burnout by now." They sat in the Addams family library, surrounded by ancient tomes and bizarre artifacts. Harry had grown oddly comfortable in the macabre mansion, even learning to navigate its many traps and hazards. "I think I'm ready to test these skills on actual Death Eaters," Harry said, closing the grimoire he'd been studying. Voldemort's people have been raiding villages near the Scottish border. We could intercept them. Wednesday considered this, absently stroking a small box that occasionally growled. Perhaps. But I have a better idea. She opened a drawer and removed a newspaper clipping. 3 of your Death Eaters were spotted in a small town called Upper Flagley yesterday. Apparently, they're searching for something. Harry took the clipping, scanning it quickly. This mentions unusual disappearances but nothing about Death Eaters. The newspaper doesn't know they're Death Eaters, Wednesday replied. But my cousin ITT has connections in the cryptozoological community. These particular wizards have been asking questions about ancient artifacts while wearing long sleeves in summer heat. How do we find them? Wednesday pulled out a small silver device that resembled a compass. I've modified a tracking spell using the Dark Mark's magical signature from the books you showed me. It should lead us directly to them. Harry raised an eyebrow. You created a Dark Mark detector. Don't sound so surprised, Potter. It's basic sympathetic magic with a directional component. She stood and straightened her perpetually black dress. Pack whatever you need. We leave at nightfall. Why wait until night? Wednesday gave him a look that suggested he'd asked something monumentally stupid. Because we're hunting dark wizards, and darkness is aesthetically appropriate. Also, they'll be less likely to notice our approach. Harry couldn't argue with that logic. As sunset painted the sky bloody red, they prepared for their first real hunt. Harry packed his invisibility cloak, the Marauder's map, though it wouldn't be useful outside Hogwarts, and a few potions he'd found useful in the past. Wednesday brought an assortment of disturbing implements, including what appeared to be a shrunken head that occasionally whispered suggestions. Remember, Wednesday said as they prepared to apparate, these aren't your schoolyard bullies or the ghouls from the marsh. These are killers who won't hesitate to use unforgivables. I know what Death Eaters are capable of, Harry replied grimly. Good. Wednesday checked her tracking device once more. Then you also know hesitation gets you killed. Use what I taught you without reservation, or don't bother coming. With that encouraging sentiment, they disappeared with twin cracks. Upper Flagley was a tiny village that straddled the border between magical and muggle communities. Most buildings were dark as they arrived, the late hour having sent all but the most determined drinkers home from the local pub. Wednesday's tracker led them toward an abandoned mill at the edge of town. As they approached, Harry could feel dark magic radiating from the building, similar to what he'd sensed from the Horcruxes but less concentrated. 3 magical signatures inside, Wednesday murmured, studying the building. Plus something else, something old. Harry nodded, casting detection spells of his own. They must have found what they were looking for. We need a plan. I have one, Wednesday said. You take the front entrance. I'll create a distraction from the rear. When they're divided, we strike. What kind of distraction? Wednesday removed a small cloth pouch from her pocket. One that would give your professors nightmares. Before Harry could ask for clarification, she melted into the shadows, moving with the silent grace of someone who'd spent their life navigating haunted mansions and midnight graveyards. Harry waited until she'd circled to the back of the mill, then approached the front entrance under a disillusionment charm. The door was locked and warded, but one of Wednesday's counter-curses made quick work of the protections. Inside, voices echoed from the main milling floor, 3 men arguing over something. Harry crept closer, staying in the shadows. The Dark Lord wants it by tomorrow, one voice insisted. We can't go back empty-handed again. It's not responding to any of the activation spells, another complained. Maybe it's just an ordinary artifact. Ordinary artifacts don't kill 3 wizards who tried to destroy them, the third voice growled. Keep trying the spells from Dollahov's book. Harry peered around a stack of rotting crates and spotted them, 3 Death Eaters in full regalia surrounding what appeared to be an ancient stone altar. On it sat a small obsidian figurine that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Suddenly, Screams erupted from outside the rear of the building, high-pitched and terrified, followed by sounds like massive wings beating. Two of the Death Eaters immediately ran toward the commotion, while one remained with the artifact. Harry recognized his cue. Stepping from the shadows, he cast the first spell Wednesday had taught him, the Ghostfire Curse. Blue-white flames engulfed the remaining Death Eater before he could raise his wand, consuming his robes and causing him to howl in agony. Unlike normal fire, the Ghostfire didn't spread or burn anything Harry didn't intend to target. The Death Eater rolled desperately on the ground, but the flames clung to him relentlessly. "Finite the spell and tell me what Voldemort wants with that artifact," Harry commanded, keeping his wand trained on the burning man. "Potter," the Death Eater gasped through his pain. "How?" Before he could finish, the door burst open as the other two Death Eaters rushed back in, pursued by what Harry could only describe as animated shadows with too many teeth and eyes. "What the hell are those?" Harry shouted, ducking a killing curse from one of the returning Death Eaters. "Shadow Wraiths," Wednesday's voice called as she stepped through the rear entrance. Harmless but excellent at causing panic. The Death Eaters whirled to face the new threat, giving Harry an opening. He cast the bone-breaking hex at the nearest one, catching him in the leg. The man collapsed with a sickening crack and a scream of agony. Wednesday engaged the third Death Eater with casual efficiency, deflecting his curses while advancing steadily. Her counterattacks weren't flashy but devastatingly precise, a curse that closed the man's windpipe, another that made his wand arms spasm uncontrollably. Within minutes, all three Death Eaters lay incapacitated. Harry extinguished his Ghostfire spell, leaving the first Death Eater gasping but alive. "Now," he said, kneeling beside the man, "let's try again. What does Voldemort want with that artifact?" The Death Eater, a younger man Harry didn't recognize, glared defiantly. "I'll die before betraying the Dark Lord." Wednesday stepped forward, her expression unchanged but somehow more menacing. "Death is not the worst outcome available to you." She knelt on the man's other side and touched his forehead with one pale finger. "The Addams family has curses that would make you beg for death's sweet release." Something in her tone made even Harry's skin crawl. The Death Eater's defiance wavered. "It's a soul anchor," he blurted. "From the Obsidian Dynasty. The Dark Lord believes it can strengthen the bonds of his special objects." Harry and Wednesday exchanged looks. "He's trying to reinforce his Horcruxes," Harry realized. "Interesting approach," Wednesday noted, examining the figurine without touching it. "Fundamentally flawed, but interesting." She turned back to the Death Eater. "Where is your master now?" "I don't know," the man insisted. "We report through intermediaries. Only the inner circle sees him directly." Wednesday sighed, looking genuinely disappointed. How tediously predictable. She stood and addressed Harry. "We should take this artifact before reinforcements arrive. It might prove educational." Harry nodded, then turned back to the Death Eaters. "What about them?" Wednesday considered the three incapacitated wizards. "Your ministry would arrest them, they'd escape within weeks, and we'd face them again. Inefficient." "We're not killing prisoners," Harry said firmly. "I wasn't suggesting execution," Wednesday replied, looking mildly offended. "I was thinking of something more instructive." She pulled a small vial from her pocket. "This contains a memory curse. They'll forget the last 6 hours and develop an intense phobia of masks. Makes continued Death Eater activity rather challenging." Harry hesitated, then nodded. It was more merciful than they deserved but less problematic than killing them. Wednesday administered the potion to each Death Eater while Harry carefully collected the obsidian figurine, wrapping it in a protective cloth. As they prepared to leave, Harry realized something. "We did it," he said, sounding almost surprised. "We actually took on 3 Death Eaters and 1 without a scratch." "Of course we did," Wednesday replied matter-of-factly. "They relied on fear and unimaginative spellwork. We had superior training and the element of surprise." She paused, then added, "Still, you performed adequately for your first real combat application." Coming from Wednesday, that was practically effusive praise. "We should celebrate," Harry suggested as they left the mill behind. Wednesday gave him a skeptical look. "Celebrate what? A minor skirmish with Voldemort's errand boys?" "A successful first hunt," Harry countered. "And the beginning of something bigger. What exactly do you have in mind?" Harry grinned, feeling genuinely optimistic for the first time in months. "We turn this into a systematic campaign. Track down Death Eaters, disrupt Voldemort's plans, find the remaining Horcruxes. Make it a proper hunt." Something like interest flickered in Wednesday's eyes. "That would require organization. Strategy. A methodology." "Exactly." Harry's grin widened. "We could even make it interesting. Develop a point system for different types of victories. A scoring system for hunting dark wizards." Wednesday considered this, her perpetual frown lightening almost imperceptibly. 5 points for foot soldiers, 15 for inner circle members, bonus points for creative methods or valuable intelligence gathered. 20 points for recovering Horcruxes, Harry added. 50 for destroying them. And 100 points for the final confrontation with Voldemort himself, Wednesday finished. For the first time since they'd met, she smiled genuinely, a sight both charming and slightly terrifying. "Perhaps you do have some Addams in you after all, Potter." As they disappeared into the night, artifacts secured and a new partnership formed, Harry felt a surge of hope. With Wednesday's knowledge and his determination, perhaps they truly could change the course of this war. Voldemort had no idea what was coming for him. Chapter 2, Darkness doubled, 10 points to me, Harry called over his shoulder, ducking under a jet of purple light that sizzled as it passed. "That hardly counts as 10, Wednesday replied, her voice carrying easily despite the chaos around them. "He's barely even marked. 5 at most." Harry shot her an incredulous look before rolling behind a crumbling wall. 3 Death Eaters had them pinned down in the abandoned factory they tracked them to outside Birmingham. "He's unconscious with every finger bone in his left hand shattered. That's creative implementation of the targeted bone hex." Wednesday dispatched another Death Eater with a casual flick of her wrist, sending the masked figure flying backward, his limbs contorting at impossible angles before he crumpled against a rusted machine. 7 points, Harry conceded, admiring her handiwork. 12, Wednesday corrected, joining him behind cover. "I incorporated 3 different curses simultaneously." Their hunting game had evolved over the past 2 weeks into an elaborate scoring system. Basic captures earned 5 points, while more creative takedowns or higher-ranking targets were worth substantially more. Harry currently led by 13 points, much to Wednesday's visible annoyance. The last Death Eater standing fired a barrage of killing curses that pulverized the concrete around them. "Shall I take this one?" Wednesday asked, brushing debris from her perpetually black dress. "Or would you like to narrow my lead?" "By all means," Harry grinned, "show off." Wednesday stood in one fluid motion and made a complicated gesture Harry didn't recognize. The air around the Death Eater shimmered, and the man suddenly froze mid-incantation, a look of horror spreading across his face as shadows seemed to peel away from the walls to wrap around his limbs. "Shadow binding," she explained as they approached the immobilized man. "An Addams family specialty. The more he struggles, the tighter they constrict." The Death Eater's eyes darted frantically between them, unable to move or speak as the living shadows held him fast. "That's definitely worth 15, Harry admitted. Maybe even 18 for style points." Wednesday's expression remained neutral, but Harry had learned to recognize the subtle signs of her satisfaction, a slight lift at the corner of her mouth, a barely perceptible straightening of her posture. "Who sent you?" she demanded of their captive. When the shadow binding prevented him from answering, she modified the spell with a gesture, allowing him to speak while keeping him restrained. "Lestrange," the man gasped. "Bellatrix Lestrange. She knows someone's hunting our cells. Sent us as bait." A desperate laugh escaped him. You think you've trapped us? You've trapped yourselves. Harry felt it then, a surge of malevolent magic far more powerful than anything their three opponents had displayed. A bone-chilling cackle echoed through the factory, sending ice down his spine. Potter! Bellatrix's sing-song voice called out. Come out, wherever you are. Brought a new friend to die with you. Wednesday raised an eyebrow at Harry. Your psychotic witch is here. How delightful. She's not Harry began, but was cut off as a massive explosion ripped through the far wall. Bellatrix Lestrange strode through the dust and rubble, her wild hair floating around her head like a dark halo, her heavily lidded eyes gleaming with madness. Two more Death Eaters flanked her, wands at the ready. Harry Potter and his little girlfriend, Bellatrix crooned, twirling her wand between her fingers. The Dark Lord will reward me beyond all others for bringing him your head. Girlfriend? Wednesday's voice dropped several degrees colder. How disappointingly heteronormative of you to assume. Bellatrix's eyes narrowed at Wednesday. And who might you be, little corpse bride? Wednesday Addams. She gave a curtsy that somehow managed to appear both perfectly proper and deeply threatening. Charmed, I'm sure. Recognition flashed across Bellatrix's face. Addams? The American family with the peculiar magical traditions? Her smile widened. How interesting. The Dark Lord will be fascinated to learn of your involvement. Harry raised his wand, ready to attack, but Wednesday placed a restraining hand on his arm. Premature, she murmured. She's not here alone. Sure enough, Harry's detection spell revealed at least 5 more magical signatures surrounding the building. They were outnumbered and potentially outmatched. Running already? Bellatrix taunted when she saw them hesitate. I expected more from the famous Harry Potter and an Addams. Crucio. The torture curse shot toward Harry with blinding speed. He prepared to dodge, but Wednesday was faster. She stepped in front, hands forming a complex pattern as she chanted something in a language that made Harry's ears hurt. The Cruciatus curse hit an invisible barrier in front of Wednesday and rebounded, not toward Bellatrix but in all directions, splitting into dozens of smaller crimson bolts that ricocheted wildly. Death Eaters dove for cover as their own curse fragmented around them. An Addams shield, Wednesday explained calmly as she grabbed Harry's wrist. Redirects pain-based curses with multiplicative effect. Now would be an excellent time to leave. Not without a parting gift, Harry insisted. He cast the Ghostfire curse at the factory's main support column, watching as blue-white flames began consuming it with supernatural hunger. That should slow them down. They rushed toward a side exit, deflecting curses as they went. Outside, the evening air was thick with fog, perfect cover for their escape. We need to apparate separately, Wednesday said as they ran. They'll track a joint disapparition too easily. Meet at the secondary location. Before Harry could reply, a killing curse blasted a crater in the ground inches from his feet. He dove sideways, returning fire with a bone-shattering hex that caught one of their pursuers in the chest. Go, he shouted to Wednesday. I'll be right behind you. For a split second, something like concern flashed across her normally impassive features. Then she disappeared with a crack just as the factory behind them groaned and began to collapse. Harry sprinted toward the tree line, casting shields behind him. 3 Death Eaters were still in pursuit, including Bellatrix, whose maniacal laughter cut through the chaos. Running like a scared little boy, Potter, she taunted. What would your dog father say? Rage boiled in Harry's veins at the mention of Sirius. He spun mid-stride, channeling his fury into the most powerful curse Wednesday had taught him. Anima Catenis, he roared. Soul Chains, a spell that bound the victim's magic to their life force, making each spell they cast drain their own vitality. It was brutally effective against powerful casters like Bellatrix, who relied on magical stamina. The curse struck true, wrapping Bellatrix in ethereal chains that glowed with an eerie blue light before sinking into her skin. She stumbled, momentarily confused, then laughed it off. Was that supposed to hurt, Potter? Avada, the killing curse died on her lips as she doubled over, gasping. Each syllable of the incantation had visibly drained her, the soul chains converting her own magical power into life-draining energy. What have you done? She wheezed, her face contorted with rage and pain. Ask your master, Harry replied coldly. He specializes in soul magic, doesn't he? With Bellatrix temporarily incapacitated, Harry took his chance. He disapparated, focusing intently on the safe house Wednesday had designated as their secondary rendezvous point, a decrepit boathouse by a remote Scottish loch. He arrived to find Wednesday pacing impatiently, her expression as close to worried as he'd ever seen it. You're late, she said, ceasing her pacing immediately when he appeared. And you cast the soul chain curse. I felt the magical signature. Bellatrix mentioned Sirius, Harry explained, collapsing onto a moldering chair. Adrenaline was fading, leaving him drained and shaky. I wanted her to suffer. Understandable, Wednesday nodded. But unwise. That curse leaves a distinctive magical trace. It will lead them straight to the Addams family when they analyze it. Harry's stomach dropped. I didn't think of that. I'm sorry. Don't apologize, Wednesday said dismissively. It simply accelerates our timeline. We need to retrieve the grimoires from the mansion before they connect me to you. We could go now, no. You're magically exhausted, and Bellatrix strikes me as the vengeful type. They'll be watching for us. Wednesday handed him a small vial containing something thick and black. Drink this. It will replenish your magical core. Harry eyed the potion suspiciously. What's in it? Nothing that would kill you, Wednesday assured him with her version of a helpful smile, which was somehow more disturbing than her frown. Mostly rare mushrooms, bat spleens, and a drop of giant squid ink. Perfectly harmless. For an Addams. That's not reassuring, Harry muttered, but downed the potion anyway. It tasted like burnt coffee and licorice, but warmth immediately spread through his limbs, reinvigorating his depleted magic. Better? Wednesday asked, studying him clinically. Much. Thanks. Harry straightened up. So what's the plan? We can't just wait for Bellatrix to figure out who you are. Wednesday sat across from him, folding her hands neatly in her lap. We need resources. Specifically, we need my family. Harry raised an eyebrow. Your family? The Addams clan has centuries of experience with dark magic, obscure curses, and avoiding those who would persecute them for their unconventional practices. She fixed him with her unervingly steady gaze. We need access to the family library and artifacts. That means going home. Won't that put them in danger too? Wednesday actually laughed, a short, sharp sound like breaking glass. You misunderstand, Potter. I'm not concerned for my family's safety. I'm concerned for your Dark Lord's followers if they're foolish enough to attack the Addams mansion directly. The confidence in her voice was absolute, and Harry remembered the deadly traps and protections surrounding her home. All right, he agreed. But first, we need sleep. Even with your potion, I'm dead on my feet. A poor choice of words, Wednesday remarked. The dead rarely stand, except in specific necromantic circumstances. Despite her macabre observation, she nodded in agreement. 6 hours of rest, then we travel. I'll take first watch. As Harry settled onto a musty cot in the corner, he realized how quickly he'd grown accustomed to Wednesday's peculiar worldview. 2 months ago, he would have been disturbed by casual references to necromancy and deadly family traps. Now, it seemed almost comforting, a reminder that he wasn't facing Voldemort's darkness alone anymore. Hey, Wednesday, he called softly. Yes, Potter. Thanks. For the shield earlier. You didn't have to step in front of that cruciatus for me. She was silent for so long that Harry thought she might not answer. "Don't be ridiculous, Potter," she finally replied. "You're no use to me hit by a torture curse." It was purely practical. But there was something in her voice, a slight softening of her typically flat tone, that made Harry smile as he drifted off to sleep. They reached the Addams mansion the following evening, approaching cautiously despite Wednesday's confidence in her family's protections. "Remember," she warned as they neared the iron gates, "my family can be enthusiastic about meeting new people. Try not to show fear. They can smell it." "Literally or figuratively?" Harry asked. "Both," Wednesday replied, utterly serious. The mansion looked even more imposing than Harry remembered, towers and turrets silhouetted against the stormy sky, windows glowing with eerie yellow light. As they approached the gate, it swung open with a creak that sounded almost welcoming. "Home, sweet home," Wednesday said dryly. They had barely set foot on the property when a massive figure emerged from the shadows, a mountain of a man with a square head and bolts protruding from his neck. "Lurch," Wednesday nodded in greeting. "This is Harry Potter. He's helping me hunt a dark wizard. Harry, this is Lurch, our butler." Lurch made a groaning sound that somehow conveyed both greeting and warning. "He says welcome, and mind the quicksand on the front path," Wednesday translated. Harry carefully followed her lead, avoiding patches of deceptively solid-looking ground as they approached the front door. It swung open before they reached it, revealing a tall, elegant woman with skin like moonlight and a dress that seemed to be made of living shadow. "Wednesday, darling," the woman exclaimed, arms outstretched. "You've brought a friend for dinner. How wonderful." "Mother, this is Harry Potter," Wednesday introduced them. "Harry, my mother, Morticia Addams." "A pleasure, Mrs. Addams," Harry said politely, taking the hand she offered. It was cool as marble but surprisingly strong. "Oh, call me Morticia, dear," she insisted. "Any friend of Wednesday's is family here. Especially one she's hunting dark wizards with." She looked between them with delighted approval. Come in, come in. The family is dying to meet you." Some literally. The interior of the mansion was just as Harry remembered, grand, Gothic, and filled with objects that defied conventional understanding of safety or good taste. Weapons adorned the walls, taxidermied creatures in impossible combinations watched from corners, and everything seemed designed to unnerve and possibly maim visitors. They followed Morticia into a vast sitting room where the rest of the family waited. A stocky man with a maniacal gleam in his eye bounded forward, kissing Morticia passively before turning to shake Harry's hand with bone-crushing enthusiasm. "Gomez Addams," he declared. "So you're the wizard hunting Voldemort with our Wednesday. Magnificent. How many have you killed so far?" "Father," Wednesday interjected, "we're not killing them. We're incapacitating them and gathering intelligence." Gomez looked crestfallen. "Not even maiming?" "Some maiming," Harry admitted. "Broken bones, mostly." "Ah." Gomez brightened immediately. A man of restraint. Admirable. "Come, let me introduce you to the rest of the clan." What followed was the most bizarre series of introductions Harry had ever experienced. Pugsley, Wednesday's explosives-obsessed brother, immediately asked if Harry had ever been blown up. Grandmama, a witch who made Madame Pants look like a fashion model, offered him a potion that she promised would put hair on your chest, and possibly your eyeballs. Uncle Fester demonstrated his ability to light a bulb in his mouth using pure bodily electricity, while Cousin Itt spoke in an incomprehensible high-speed chatter that only the family seemed to understand. By the time dinner was announced, Harry's head was spinning. The Addams family made the Weasleys look positively mundane by comparison. Dinner itself was an adventure in culinary terror. Dishes with names like roasted raven with nightshade glaze and quicksand pudding were served by Lurch with ceremonial gravity. Harry carefully followed Wednesday's lead on what to eat and what to politely decline. "So, Harry," Morticia said as she delicately sliced what appeared to be a still-wiggling tentacle, "Wednesday tells us you're hunting Horcruxes. Such fascinating dark artifacts. Gomez's great-uncle Vlad experimented with them briefly before deciding immortality was dreadfully boring. You know about Horcruxes? Harry asked, surprised. My dear boy, the Addams family library contains the most comprehensive collection of dark magical knowledge outside the Vatican's secret archives, Gomez declared proudly. Soul magic, blood curses, necromantic rituals, we've documented them all. For academic purposes, of course, Morticia added with a wink that suggested otherwise. We need access to the library, Wednesday explained. Harry accidentally used an Addams family curse against Bellatrix Lestrange. They'll trace it back here eventually. Rather than showing concern, the family looked delighted at this news. Wonderful! Gomez exclaimed. We haven't had a proper magical siege in decades. Which curse was it, my boy? The soul chain, Harry admitted. Gomez slapped the table in approval. Excellent choice. Elegant, effective, and just the right amount of lingering agony. You've taught him well, Wednesday. He's a quick study, Wednesday conceded, which from her was effusive praise. After dinner, Gomez led them to the family library, a vast chamber that seemed to extend impossibly far beneath the mansion. Shelves stretched from floor to ceiling, crammed with books that whispered, moaned, or occasionally snapped at passing readers. Everything we have on soul magic is in the East Wing, Gomez explained, gesturing toward a shadowy corner. Horcruxes specifically would be in Section 13, subsection Omega. Mind the Guardian Sphinx, the password is nevermore, but she'll still try to eat you out of principle. And for curses effective against living targets, Morticia added, you'll want the West Alcove. The books there are particularly spirited, they prefer readers with passionate intentions. Harry glanced at Wednesday, who nodded reassuringly. Mother's right. The grimoires respond to your determination. Show fear or hesitation, and they'll refuse to open. I'll help Harry find what we need, Wednesday told her parents. We're looking for something specific about countering soul fractures and tracking dark artifacts. Take all the time you need, darling, Morticia said. Your room is prepared, and we've set up the guest dungeon for Harry. We assumed he'd prefer it over the swamp suite, given he's British. Actually, Mother, Harry will be staying in the observatory tower. We need to work through the night, and the astronomical alignments will strengthen certain detection spells. Morticia and Gomez exchanged meaningful glances. Of course, Wednesday, her mother said with the faintest hint of a knowing smile. The tower it is. Once her parents left, Harry turned to Wednesday with a raised eyebrow. The observatory. It has the strongest protective enchantments, she explained flatly. And it's furthest from Pugsley's laboratory, which reduces your chances of being accidentally dismembered in your sleep. Thoughtful of you. Merely practical. Finding a replacement chosen one would be inconvenient at this stage. They spent hours scouring the library, pulling book after book on soul magic, cursed artifacts, and magical tracking methods. The Addams collection made the Hogwarts restricted section look like a children's reading corner. Here, Wednesday said eventually, showing a dusty tome toward Harry. The Compendium of Soul Fracturing by Herpo the Foul. First-hand account of Horcrux creation with notes on vulnerabilities. Harry skimmed the pages, grimacing at the gruesome illustrations. This confirms what Dumbledore told me, Horcruxes can be destroyed by basilisk venom, fiend fire, or other substances of similar magical potency. But there's nothing new here about tracking them. Try this one, Wednesday handed him another book bound in what looked distressingly like human skin. Sympathetic Magical Bonds in Divided Souls. Egyptian in origin, much older than your Herpo. This proved more useful. The ancient text detailed how fractured soul pieces maintained a connection regardless of distance, a magical resonance that could, in theory, be detected with the right spells. This could work, Harry said excitedly. If we can detect the resonance between Voldemort and his Horcruxes, we can locate them all simultaneously, Wednesday finished. But we'd need something directly connected to his soul. a personal possession or a sample of his magic? Harry thought for a moment, then pulled out his wand. What about this? It shares a core with Voldemort's wand. Twin phoenix feathers. Wednesday's eyes widened fractionally, the equivalent of open-mouthed shock from anyone else. That's actually perfect. A sympathetic connection to his magical signature. They continued working through the night, Wednesday occasionally calling on various family members for specific expertise. Uncle Fester provided insights on magical conductivity, Grandmama contributed knowledge of archaic detection potions, and even Pugsley offered useful suggestions about using explosive magic as a catalyst. By dawn, they had developed a ritual that would, theoretically, allow them to locate every piece of Voldemort's soul simultaneously. We'll need specific components, Wednesday said, reviewing their notes. Moonstone powder, blood of a magical creature that's encountered Voldemort, quintessence of midnight. Where do we get quintessence of midnight? Harry interrupted. Grandmama has some in her pantry. Between potions, ingredients and cooking supplies. Third shelf, behind the pickled basilisk eyes. Of course she did. They spent the next 3 days gathering components and preparing the ritual. The Addams family proved extraordinarily helpful, offering resources and expertise without question. Harry found himself warming to them despite, or perhaps because of, their macabre peculiarities. They treated dark magic not as something evil but as a natural force to be respected and understood, much like Wednesday did. On the third night, as they worked in the observatory tower, Harry noticed Wednesday watching him with an unusual expression. "What?" he asked, looking up from the ritual diagram he was drawing. "You're different," she observed. "From when we first met." "How so?" "You've stopped flinching when I mention blood magic. You discussed necromantic theory without moral protestations. You've even started adding your own modifications to Addams' family curses." She tilted her head slightly. "You're becoming comfortable with darkness." Harry considered this. "I'm not becoming dark. I'm just expanding my understanding of magic. Dumbledore always insisted love was the power Voldemort knows not. Maybe he was partly right, but not in the way he meant." "Explain," Wednesday prompted, genuinely interested. "Voldemort fears and rejects what he doesn't understand, love, connection, the power of sacrifice. But he also has a limited view of dark magic itself. He uses it for domination, for creating fear." Harry gestured to the mansion around them. "Your family embraces darkness but without malice. There's joy in it, even love in a strange way. That's something Voldemort could never grasp." Wednesday was silent for a long moment, studying him with those intense dark eyes. "That's surprisingly insightful, Potter." Before Harry could respond, a massive explosion shook the mansion, rattling the tower windows and sending dust cascading from the ceiling. "It seems our guests have arrived," Wednesday observed calmly, rising to her feet. Harry rushed to the window. Below, at the edge of the property, flashes of spellfire illuminated a group of black-robed figures attempting to breach the mansion's protective barriers. Each assault was met with increasingly bizarre defensive responses, hedges transforming into tentacled monstrosities, statues animating to hurl stone projectiles, and what appeared to be a pack of disembodied hands scrambling across the lawn to grapple with the intruders. "Your family's defenses are impressive," Harry noted. "Those are just the preliminary measures," Wednesday replied, gathering their research materials. "The serious defenses haven't activated yet." As if on cue, the very ground beneath the Death Eaters liquefied, swallowing several before re-solidifying, leaving them trapped up to their necks. Storm clouds gathered with unnatural speed directly above the property, unleashing bolts of lightning that struck with improbable accuracy. "Should we help?" Harry asked, already moving toward the door. "No need. This is Wednesday's night off," came Morticia's voice as she appeared in the doorway, looking entirely unruffled despite the battle raging outside. "Gomez has been hoping for some excitement. He's activating the catapults now." Sure enough, Harry watched as flaming projectiles began arcing from the mansion's roof toward the trapped Death Eaters, who were struggling to maintain shield charms against the onslaught. "This happens often?" Harry asked incredulously. "Oh, not nearly often enough," Morticia sighed wistfully. "The witch trials provided much more regular entertainment. These days, we're lucky to get a mob once a decade." Wednesday gathered the last of their materials. "We should complete the ritual while they're distracted. Their presence actually works to our advantage. Active dark marks will strengthen the sympathetic connection to Voldemort." They retreated to a circular chamber at the tower's peak, where moonlight streamed through a domed skylight. Below, the sounds of battle continued, screams punctuated by explosions and the occasional maniacal laugh that could only belong to Gomez or Uncle Fester. Wednesday quickly arranged their components in a precise pattern while Harry inscribed the necessary runes around the edge of the circle. At the center, they placed a map of Britain and Harry's wand. "Ready?" Wednesday asked, her face ghostly in the moonlight. Harry nodded, taking his position opposite her. They began the incantation together, voices weaving in unison as they enacted the complex ritual. The components began to glow with an otherworldly light, power building in palpable waves around them. Harry felt the magic pulling at his core, drawing on his connection to Voldemort. The moment they completed the final verse, a surge of energy exploded outward. Harry's wand rose into the air, hovering above the map as tendrils of golden light extended from its tip. Each tendril snaked across the parchment before striking specific locations with pinpoint accuracy. "It worked," Wednesday breathed, a rare note of excitement in her voice. 7 points. 7 soul fragments. Harry leaned forward, studying the locations. 1 at Hogwarts, 1 in London, probably Grimmauld Place or the Ministry, 1 in what looks like Little Hangleton. 2 are moving, Wednesday noted, pointing to tendrils that didn't terminate in fixed points but wavered slightly. 1 must be Nagini. The other. Voldemort himself, Harry finished. "We found all of them." Their triumph was short-lived. The tower door burst open, admitting Pugsley, whose face was smeared with soot and what looked disturbingly like blood. "Wednesday. Death Eaters broke through the west perimeter. Father says to warn you they're headed for the tower." Wednesday calmly folded the map, securing it and their notes inside her dress. "How many?" 6, including the crazy witch with the hair. "She seems really mad about something," Pugsley added with obvious admiration. "Bellatrix," Harry growled. "She must have tracked the soul chain curse." "Go help Mother activate the inner defenses," Wednesday instructed her brother. "We'll handle this." Pugsley nodded, tossing them what looked like a cluster of small, pulsating orbs. "Portable swamps, enhanced with Grandmama's poison fungi. Just throw and run." The moment he left, Harry and Wednesday moved into defensive positions on either side of the chamber's entrance. "Remember," Wednesday murmured, "Bellatrix is mine. She called me your girlfriend. That demands retribution." Harry might have laughed if the situation weren't so dire. Instead, he nodded, wand at the ready as footsteps pounded up the spiral staircase. The first Death Eater through the door fell immediately to Harry's bone-shattering hex, his legs collapsing beneath him. The second and third rushed in together, dividing their attention between the two defenders. Wednesday dealt with her opponent efficiently, using a curse that seemed to turn the Death Eater's robes into constricting serpents. Harry dueled his more conventionally, though incorporating several of Wednesday's teachings about targeting vulnerabilities rather than attempting to overpower. Then Bellatrix arrived, her wild hair more disheveled than usual, her eyes burning with hatred as they fixed on Wednesday. "Little Addams girl," she hissed, ignoring the fallen bodies of her companions. "The Dark Lord sends his regards." "How thoughtful," Wednesday replied flatly. "I'd return the sentiment, but I try not to encourage megalomaniacal delusions." Bellatrix's face contorted with rage. "Crucio." The torture curse shot toward Wednesday, who deflected it with a casual gesture that sent it ricocheting into a nearby bookshelf, which promptly burst into flames. What followed was the most intense magical duel Harry had ever witnessed. Bellatrix attacked with the full arsenal of dark magic at her disposal, curses that melted stone, conjured flesh-eating insects, and once, a spell that briefly caused the air itself to become toxic. Wednesday countered with equal creativity and considerably more composure. Her movements were economical and precise, her expression never changing from its usual deadpan as she matched Bellatrix's curse for curse. "What's wrong, little girl?" Bellatrix taunted between spells. "Afraid to use real dark magic? The Addams family has quite the reputation, but you seem disappointingly restrained." "Effectiveness doesn't require theatrics," Wednesday replied, deflecting a killing curse that left a smoking crater in the wall. "Though if you insist." She switched tactics, going from defensive to aggressive in an instant. Her next spell caught Bellatrix off guard, a beam of midnight black energy that split into dozens of needle-like projectiles when Bellatrix tried to shield against it. The Death Eater screamed as several needles penetrated her shield, embedding themselves in her wand arm. "Bone needles," Wednesday explained conversationally. "They'll work their way to your marrow over the next few hours. Quite painful, I'm told." Bellatrix snarled like a wounded animal. "Avada Kedavra." The killing curse flew not at Wednesday but at Harry, who had been engaged with another Death Eater and wasn't prepared for the sudden attack. Wednesday reacted without hesitation. She threw herself into the curse's path, hands already forming the gestures of an Addams family protection spell. A shimmering black barrier materialized before her, but not quickly enough to fully intercept the killing curse. The green light struck her barrier and partially penetrated it, hitting Wednesday with reduced but still devastating force. She crumpled to the ground, her protection spell disintegrating. "No!" Harry roared, a wave of magic exploding outward from him with such force that the remaining Death Eaters were slammed against the walls. Bellatrix alone remained standing, though clearly struggling. "Poor Potter," she mocked. "Lost another one, have you?" Harry advanced on her, magic crackling around him like lightning. In that moment, every lesson Wednesday had taught him crystallized into perfect, terrible clarity. "Sanguinum vincula," he intoned, his voice eerily calm despite the rage burning inside him. Blood binding, the most powerful curse Wednesday had taught him. It wasn't designed to kill but to subjugate, linking the victim's blood to the caster's will. It was a spell of absolute control, considered too dark even for most Addams to use regularly. Bellatrix's eyes widened in shock as her own blood betrayed her, burning through her veins like acid. She fell to her knees, gasping in agony. "Kill me then," she spat defiantly. "Prove you're just as dark as us." "Death would be merciful," Harry replied coldly. "I prefer justice." With another flick of his wand, he modified the curse, adding a component Wednesday had theorized but never tested, a memory extraction element that forcibly pulled specific knowledge from the victim's mind into physical form. Bellatrix screamed as silvery strands of memory were wrenched from her, forming a swirling mass that Harry captured in a conjured vial. "Everything you know about Voldemort's plans, locations, and defenses," he explained, pocketing the vial. "Much more useful than your death." He ended the blood binding with a gesture, leaving Bellatrix conscious but magically drained. Then he rushed to Wednesday's side, heart pounding with fear. She lay motionless, her pale skin now nearly translucent, dark eyes closed. But as Harry reached for her, those eyes snapped open, fixing him with their usual intensity. "Did you kill her?" Wednesday asked, voice weaker than he'd ever heard it but still characteristically direct. Relief flooded through him. "No. But I got her memories about Voldemort's operations." "Good. Killing would have been predictable." She attempted to sit up, winced, then allowed Harry to help her. "The killing curse? You intercepted it. Your shield blocked most of it." Wednesday nodded slightly. "Partial deflection. Grandmother Frump would be disappointed in my technique." "You saved my life," Harry said softly. "Don't be sentimental about it," she replied, though without her usual sharpness. I've invested too much time training you to watch it wasted by Bellatrix Lestrange. Before Harry could respond, Gomez and Morticia burst into the chamber, followed by Lurch and Uncle Fester. They took in the scene with remarkable composure, Death Eaters scattered about in various states of incapacitation, Bellatrix kneeling in defeated rage, and Harry supporting their daughter. Wednesday. Morticia rushed forward, kneeling beside them. A killing curse. How marvelous. Your first brush with death by unforgivable. I'm so proud. Only a partial hit, Mother, Wednesday corrected, somehow managing to sound disappointed despite her weakened state. The shield deflected most of it. Still, Gomez beamed, it's a family milestone. We must celebrate. Lurch moved efficiently around the chamber, collecting fallen Death Eaters and slinging them over his massive shoulders like sacks of flour. Uncle Fester approached Bellatrix with disconcerting enthusiasm. This one's still conscious, he observed delightedly. Can I keep her? I've always wanted a pet Death Eater. No, Fester, Morticia said gently. She's a psychotic mass murderer with no regard for human life or basic hygiene. So she'd be a terrible influence on the children. Fester nodded sagely. Good point. To the dungeon, then. The ministry holding cells would be more appropriate, Harry suggested, still supporting Wednesday. Along with the others. Their memories of this location should be modified first, though. A practical solution, Wednesday approved weakly. Perhaps you are learning. Within an hour, the mansion was secured. The surviving Death Eaters, including a furious but powerless Bellatrix, were bound with enchanted chains from the Addams family collection and prepared for transfer to ministry custody. Wednesday had been moved to her bedroom, a chamber that resembled a Victorian funeral parlor crossed with a torture museum. Despite Morticia's insistence that a little killing curse is good for the Constitution, Harry refused to leave Wednesday's side until she had properly recovered. This is unnecessary, she protested as he adjusted the black silk pillows behind her head. Addams women don't require coddling after near-death experiences. Great-Aunt Calpurnia was buried alive 7 times and never complained once. Humor me, Harry replied, setting a steaming cup of Grandmama's restorative potion on the bedside table. You took a killing curse for me. The least I can do is make sure you don't die afterward. Wednesday fixed him with her penetrating stare. Why does it matter to you whether I live or die, Potter? The question caught him off guard with its directness. Because you're my friend, Wednesday. My partner in this. Partner, she repeated, testing the word. Is that what we are? What would you call it? Wednesday was silent for a moment, contemplating. Initially, you were an amusing diversion. A test subject for family curses against a worthy opponent. And now? Now. She hesitated, displaying more uncertainty than Harry had ever seen from her. Now, I find myself inconveniently concerned with your continued survival. It's most disturbing. From Wednesday, this was practically a declaration of deep affection. Harry smiled. I feel the same way. Inconveniently concerned about you, that is. Something that might have been a smile flickered across Wednesday's face before she suppressed it. How terribly sentimental of us both. Grandmother Frump would be appalled. Before Harry could respond, a soft knock came at the door. Morticia entered, carrying a large, ancient tome bound in midnight black leather. I hope I'm not interrupting anything momentous, she said with a knowing smile. But we've been examining Bellatrix's memories, fascinating woman, really, in need of better hobbies and perhaps some therapy, and Gomez noticed something interesting about Voldemort's resurrection ritual. She placed the book on Wednesday's lap, open to a page showing an elaborate magical ceremony. Harry leaned closer, recognizing elements from the graveyard ritual that had restored Voldemort's body. Bone of the father, flesh of the servant, blood of the enemy, he recited grimly. Yes, but look at the base components, Morticia indicated specific passages in the ancient text. This is the original version of the ritual, created by the Obsidian dynasty of ancient Egypt. The Addams family preserved it when the dynasty fell. Wednesday studied the page with renewed energy. The cauldron composition, the specific placement of the bones, even the incantation structure. She looked up at her mother. Voldemort used an Addams family ritual. A corrupted version, Morticia corrected. But essentially, yes. Which means we know its weaknesses, Wednesday finished, eyes gleaming. Every ritual has a counter-ritual, especially one this complex. Harry felt a surge of hope. We could undo his resurrection. Not exactly, Wednesday explained, suddenly animated in a way he'd never seen before. But we could modify the binding between his fractured soul and his constructed body. Make him vulnerable again. Morticia nodded approvingly. I'll have your father bring the relevant texts. This could be exactly what you need. She glided toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Bellatrix has been secured in the ministry holding cells, though Fester is quite disappointed. He's consoling himself by teaching Pugsley a new method of explosive conduction using human teeth. After she left, Harry turned to Wednesday with renewed determination. This is it, isn't it? The key to defeating him. Potentially, Wednesday cautioned, though excitement lurked beneath her usual deadpan exterior. We need to study the original ritual thoroughly, understand how Voldemort modified it, and design a counter that specifically targets his vulnerabilities. She attempted to rise from the bed but swayed dangerously. Harry gently pushed her back against the pillows. Tomorrow, he insisted. You need to recover your strength first. Weakness is inefficient, she protested. So is collapsing mid-ritual because you're still suffering from the effects of a killing curse, Harry countered. Rest now. We'll start fresh in the morning. Wednesday looked like she might argue further, but eventually relented. Your reasoning is sound, if frustratingly cautious. Harry smiled as he pulled a chair closer to her bedside. I'll take that as a compliment. It wasn't intended as one, she replied, though the corner of her mouth twitched upward. But your concern is, not entirely unwelcome. Coming from Wednesday, it was practically a heartfelt declaration. Harry settled into the chair, prepared to keep vigil through the night. Outside, the storm that had gathered during the Death Eater attack continued to rage, lightning occasionally illuminating the Gothic splendor of Wednesday's chamber. As she drifted off to sleep, Harry found himself watching her face, normally so controlled and expressionless, now softened by exhaustion and healing magic. For someone who had dedicated her life to the study of darkness and death, she looked remarkably peaceful. He realized with sudden clarity that their partnership had evolved into something neither of them had anticipated, a genuine connection built on mutual respect, shared purpose, and, yes, even something like affection. Voldemort wouldn't stand a chance against them now. The next week passed in a flurry of intensive research and preparation. As Wednesday recovered her strength, they dove deep into the ancient rituals of the Obsidian dynasty, comparing Voldemort's corrupted version with the original texts. The Addams family proved invaluable, each member contributing their unique expertise. Gomez provided insights into the alchemical components, Morticia explained the symbolic aspects of sacrificial magic, and Grandmama supplied rare ingredients that would have been impossible to source elsewhere. Even Pugsley helped, testing small-scale versions of counter-ritual components with alarming enthusiasm and only occasional explosions. The key difference, Wednesday explained one evening as they worked in the library, is that Voldemort used your blood unwillingly taken. In the original ritual, the enemy participated voluntarily, transforming enmity into alliance through sacrifice. That explains why my mother's protection still works against him, Harry realized. The blood was taken, not given. Precisely. And it gives us our opening. Wednesday indicated a complex diagram they'd been developing. If we can create a ritual that reverses the flow, drawing your blood back symbolically while redistributing his fractured soul, we can potentially bind all his Horcruxes to his physical form simultaneously. Making them all vulnerable when we target him directly, Harry finished. Brilliant. It's elegant, Wednesday agreed. Though extremely dangerous. The magical backlash alone could kill anyone within 100 yards. Harry grinned. Then we'll have to make sure we're 101 yards away when it happens. Wednesday almost smiled, the closest she typically came to showing amusement. Your recklessness is becoming almost Addams-like, Potter. My parents would be delighted. Speaking of her parents, Harry had noticed how the Addams family had begun treating him with increasing familiarity, not just as Wednesday's ally but almost as an honorary family member. Morticia insisted he join them for family dinner each night. Gomez had begun teaching him fencing, for those situations when magic lacks theatrical flair, and even Lurch had started responding to his requests with marginally less threatening groans. It was oddly comforting, this acceptance by a family so different from any he'd known, yet bound by such obvious affection for one another. The Addamses might celebrate darkness, find beauty in the macabre, and keep pet carnivorous plants, but their loyalty to each other was unquestionable. Late one night, as they finalized the ritual components, an unexpected visitor arrived at the mansion. Harry and Wednesday were summoned to the main hall, where they found Morticia and Gomez entertaining a visibly uncomfortable Remus Lupin. "Harry!" Lupin exclaimed, relief washing over his scarred face. "Thank Merlin you're all right. We've been searching everywhere since you disappeared." "Professor Lupin," Harry greeted him, suddenly aware of how much had changed since he'd last seen any Order member. "How did you find me?" "The Death Eaters you delivered to the Ministry," Lupin explained. Kingsley recognized the magical signature on their bindings as belonging to the Addams family. It took some doing to locate their residence, but... He glanced around at the decorative weapons and stuffed creatures. "It's rather distinctive once you know what to look for." "Mr. Lupin was just explaining the Order's concerns about your new associations," Morticia said smoothly. "We were assuring him that you've been perfectly safe here, apart from the usual household hazards." "Usual household," Lupin began, then shook his head. "Harry, the Order needs to know what you're doing. Dumbledore left you a mission, but he didn't intend for you to pursue it alone, and certainly not with..." He hesitated, glancing at Wednesday. "With an Addams?" Wednesday finished, her tone colder than usual. "How disappointing. I expected better from a werewolf." Lupin started. "How did you? Your lunar aura is quite distinctive," she explained dismissively. "Besides, the Addams family has always maintained excellent relations with the lycanthropic community. Great-uncle Fenris ran with the Norwegian packs for decades." "That's interesting," Lupin managed, clearly thrown off balance. "But Harry, you have to understand our concern. You vanished without word, then suddenly Death Eaters start appearing bound by ancient curses the Order doesn't recognize. Voldemort is furious, placing enormous bounties on both your heads. What exactly are you doing?" Harry exchanged a glance with Wednesday before responding. "We're hunting Horcruxes, Professor. And we've found them all." Lupin's eyes widened. "All of them? How?" "Addams family magic," Wednesday stated simply. "Considerably more effective than your Order's methods. We've also developed a ritual that might make Voldemort vulnerable," Harry continued. "Based on the resurrection ceremony he used in the graveyard." Lupin looked between them with growing concern. "Harry, these sound like extremely dark magical practices." "Dumbledore would never." "Dumbledore is dead," Harry interrupted, more sharply than he intended. "He left me with an impossible task and inadequate preparation. Wednesday and her family have given me the tools I actually need to finish this." "At what cost?" Lupin pressed. "Dark magic changes people, Harry. It corrupts, that's a common misconception," Gomez interjected cheerfully. "Dark magic is simply magic with certain properties and affinities. Like a well-made sword, it can defend a home or slaughter innocents. The intent matters more than the instrument. The Addams family has practiced what you call dark magic for centuries," Morticia added. "Yet we've never produced a single Dark Lord or participated in genocidal campaigns. Curious, isn't it?" Lupin seemed momentarily speechless, his worldview visibly shaken. Harry took the opportunity to continue. I understand your concerns, Professor. I had the same ones at first. But I've learned that the rigid categorization of magic as light or dark is more political than practical. He gestured to Wednesday. She's taught me to use power responsibly, regardless of its classification. It's true that he remains disappointingly ethical in his application, Wednesday confirmed. Despite my best efforts. That earned a surprised laugh from Lupin. He studied Wednesday with new interest. You're not what I expected from an Addams. Few people are what others expect them to be, she replied. Including your chosen one. Lupin turned back to Harry, conflict evident in his eyes. The Order won't approve of this alliance, Harry. Molly will be especially concerned. I'm not asking for approval, Harry said firmly. Just understanding. We have a plan that could end this war, but we need to execute it our way. Perhaps, Morticia suggested, Mr. Lupin could observe your preparations himself before reporting back to your order. See firsthand the precautions you're taking. Wednesday nodded in agreement. The ritual would benefit from a third magical perspective. Especially one with lycanthropic sensitivity to magical currents. Harry could see Lupin's curiosity warring with his caution. Finally, the former professor nodded. I'll stay and observe. If your methods seem reasonably safe, I'll help explain to the others. Wonderful. Gomez exclaimed. You can stay in the guest dungeon. We've just installed new chains with extra padding, very comfortable. Perhaps the blue room would be more appropriate for our guest, Morticia suggested gently. The blue room? Pugsley piped up from the doorway where he'd been eavesdropping. But the giant squid is using that bathtub. The squid can move to the moat temporarily, Morticia decided. Do show Mr. Lupin to his room, Lurch. The butler appeared silently behind Lupin, causing him to jump when he groaned in acknowledgement. As Lupin followed Lurch upstairs, casting nervous glances back at them, Harry turned to Wednesday. Will this complicate things? Perhaps, she admitted. But having a direct line to the order could prove useful when we implement the final phase. Besides, his werewolf nature makes him more open to alternative magical approaches than most of your associates would be. Harry nodded, hoping she was right. The last thing they needed was the Order attempting to interfere with their carefully laid plans. Over the next few days, Lupin observed their preparations with increasing fascination. Despite his initial skepticism, the academic in him couldn't resist the allure of magical knowledge preserved nowhere else in the wizarding world. He asked intelligent questions, offered useful suggestions, and gradually came to appreciate the meticulous care with which Harry and Wednesday were approaching their dangerous task. It's remarkable, he admitted to Harry one evening as they took a break from ritual preparation. The Addams' understanding of magical theory is unlike anything I've encountered. It's as though they never accepted the artificial divisions the Ministry established between different branches of magic. That's exactly it, Harry agreed. They see magic as a unified force with different expressions, not separate categories of acceptable and forbidden practices. Lupin studied him thoughtfully. You've changed, Harry. Not in the way I feared, but, you seem more confident. More centered. Wednesday's influence, Harry acknowledged. She doesn't waste energy on self-doubt or unnecessary moral panic. She analyzes problems, develops solutions, and implements them precisely. And yet, Lupin observed with surprising insight, she risked her life to protect you from Bellatrix. That suggests a connection beyond mere pragmatism. Harry felt heat rise to his face. We're partners, he said, perhaps too quickly. We look out for each other. Lupin smiled knowingly but didn't press the issue. That evening, as they gathered in the library for a final review of their plan, an unexpected interruption arrived. The mansion's warning system, a series of shrieks, moans, and one particularly disturbing giggle, activated, indicating multiple intruders approaching the grounds. Death Eaters again? Harry asked, reaching for his wand. Gomez, who had been examining their ritual diagram, shook his head. The pattern is different. Not hostile intent, more like determined righteousness. He grinned suddenly. Ah. Must be your order friends, come to rescue you. Lupin winced. I was supposed to report back yesterday. They must have grown concerned. Sure enough, when they reached the main entrance, they found a group of Order members navigating the front path under Moody's guidance, his magical eye apparently helping them avoid the various traps and pitfalls. Alastair Moody, Morticia observed from the window. I haven't seen him since that unpleasantness in Budapest in '73. His paranoia was impressive even then. You know Moody? Harry asked, surprised. The magical world is smaller than you might think, she replied cryptically. Especially for those with specialized interests. They opened the door before the Order could reach it, presenting a tableau that must have seemed surreal to the newcomers, Harry and Wednesday standing beside Lupin, flanked by various Addamses in their usual macabre finery. Potter. Moody growled, magical eyes swiveling wildly to take in the mansion and its inhabitants. What in Merlin's name are you playing at? Behind him stood Kingsley Shacklebolt, Tonks, Arthur Weasley, and, to Harry's dismay, a furious-looking Molly Weasley. Harry James Potter. Molly began, pushing forward. We've been worried sick. Running off without a word, consorting with, she faltered as her gaze fell on Wednesday and the assembled Addams family. Perhaps we should continue this discussion inside, Morticia suggested smoothly. The venomous tentaculars get restless at dusk, and the quicksand on the east path is particularly hungry tonight. The Order members exchanged alarmed glances but followed as Morticia led them to the main sitting room. Harry noted with amusement how they carefully avoided touching anything, their eyes darting nervously from stuffed beast to mounted weapon to bubbling cauldron. Once seated, though Moody refused, preferring to stand with his back to the wall, Lupin attempted to explain the situation. Harry and Miss Addams have made remarkable progress on the task Dumbledore left him, he began diplomatically. They've located all the objects, and developed a method that could potentially end this conflict decisively. Using dark magic, no doubt, Moody interrupted, his magical eye fixed accusingly on Wednesday. The Addams family has a reputation, girl. Nothing good. Wednesday regarded him with her usual impassive stare. Your good and bad are tediously subjective, Mr. Moody. Results are not. And what results have you achieved? Kingsley asked, his deep voice calm but skeptical. Harry stepped forward. We've captured 12 Death Eaters, including Bellatrix Lestrange. We've identified all of Voldemort's Horcruxes and pinpointed their locations. And we've developed a ritual that can bind his fractured soul pieces together, making them vulnerable to a single, coordinated strike. The Order members looked stunned. Tonks was the first to recover. You caught Bellatrix? How? She caught herself, essentially, Wednesday replied. Her obsession with vengeance led her into a situation where her magical ability was offset by her psychological instability. A common failing among dark wizards with narcissistic tendencies. Molly still looked deeply troubled. Harry, dear, these methods, they don't sound like what Dumbledore would have wanted for you. With all due respect, Mrs. Weasley, Dumbledore left me to hunt Horcruxes without telling me how to find them, destroy them, or protect myself in the process. Harry's voice was firm but gentle. Wednesday and her family have given me tools that actually work. But at what cost to yourself? Arthur asked quietly. Dark magic leaves marks, Harry, not all of them visible. Wednesday's patience visibly thinned. This persistent superstition is becoming tiresome. Magic responds to intent and precision. Potter remains irritatingly noble despite my best efforts to corrupt him with practical magical theory. Surprisingly, that earned a snort of amusement from Moody. Girls got a point. Magic's neutral by nature. Ministry classifications are mostly political. Alastair. Molly looked shocked. What? It's true, the grizzled Auror shrugged. Not saying I approve of everything the Addams clan gets up to, but I've never known them to side with Dark Lords or blood purists. Quite the opposite, historically speaking. The Addams family has always found would-be tyrants tediously uncreative, Morticia confirmed. True darkness has artistry. Megalomaniacs lack subtlety. A strange standoff ensued, with the Order members clearly torn between their legitimate concerns and the undeniable results Harry and Wednesday had achieved. Finally, Kingsley broke the impasse. Perhaps you could show us this ritual you've developed, he suggested. If it's as promising as you claim, the Order should be prepared to support its implementation. Harry looked to Wednesday, who nodded slightly. Follow us, she said, rising with her usual graceful economy of movement. We've set up the ritual chamber in the observatory tower. As they climbed the winding staircase, Harry noticed Molly watching him with deep concern. He fell back to walk beside her, wanting to reassure her despite his frustration with the Order's intervention. I'm still me, Mrs. Weasley, he said quietly. Just, better equipped for what I need to do. Molly searched his face, her maternal instincts clearly at war with her fear of dark influences. You seem different, Harry. More, intense. More focused, he corrected gently. Wednesday taught me to stop wasting energy on fear and doubt. To channel it into precision instead. Ahead of them, Wednesday led the group into the observatory, where their ritual diagram occupied the center of the circular chamber. Star charts lined the walls, and ancient magical instruments tracked celestial movements with quiet clicks and whirs. This, Wednesday explained, gesturing to the elaborate diagram, is a modified version of the ritual Voldemort used to resurrect himself. By inverting key components and utilizing the sympathetic connection between Potter's blood and Voldemort's constructed form, we can create a reverse flow that temporarily binds all soul fragments to the central consciousness. The Order members gathered around the diagram, studying it with varying degrees of comprehension. Kingsley and Moody, with their Auror training, seemed to grasp the concepts most readily. Ingenious, Kingsley murmured, tracing one part of the pattern with his finger. This creates a temporal loop in the soul magic, forcing synchronization. Yes, Wednesday confirmed. Once synchronized, a properly targeted disruption spell will cascade through all connected fragments simultaneously. Killing him permanently, Moody concluded, magical eye fixed on the ritual center. No resurrection possible. Precisely. And the risks? Arthur asked, concern evident in his voice. Wednesday didn't sugarcoat it. Substantial. The ritual requires precise timing, specific astronomical alignments, and a direct magical connection to Voldemort himself. The power requirements are enormous, and the potential for catastrophic backlash is significant. Which is why we've built in multiple fail-safes and protective measures, Harry added quickly, seeing the alarm on several faces. We're not being reckless. Just ambitious, Wednesday clarified. There's a difference. A tense discussion followed, with Order members raising objections and concerns that Harry and Wednesday addressed with varying degrees of patience. Throughout it all, Harry noticed that Molly remained unusually quiet, watching him and Wednesday with an expression he couldn't quite interpret. Finally, as the debate seemed to reach a stalemate, Molly spoke up. How did you meet? She asked Wednesday directly. The question caught everyone off guard, including Wednesday herself. After a moment's hesitation, she answered with characteristic directness. Potter broke into our family mansion while tracking a magical signature similar to a Horcrux. He survived 17 lethal traps without dying, which I found moderately impressive. I offered to teach him magic that might actually be useful against a Dark Lord, rather than the sanitized curriculum taught at your school. And why did you help him? Molly pressed. What do you get from this arrangement? Wednesday considered the question with her usual gravity. Initially, entertainment value and the opportunity to test family curses against worthy targets. The Addams family has a long tradition of using our abilities against those who threaten innocent lives, particularly megalomaniacal wizards with delusions of superiority. And now, Molly's perception was sharper than Harry had given her credit for. Wednesday's dark eyes flicked briefly to Harry, then back to Molly. Now, I find I have developed a personal interest in seeing Potter succeed. His survival has become relevant to my own well-being in ways I find both inconvenient and unavoidable. The admission hung in the air, surprisingly vulnerable from someone as composed as Wednesday. Harry felt warmth spread through his chest at her words, inadequate as they might seem to others. From Wednesday, they were practically a declaration. Molly studied Wednesday for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I see. She turned to Harry. And you feel the same way? Harry met Wednesday's gaze across the chamber. Yes, he said simply. I do. Something shifted in the atmosphere of the room. The Order members exchanged glances, a new understanding dawning. This wasn't just an alliance of convenience or a dark influence over their chosen one, it was a partnership built on genuine connection and shared purpose. Well then, Molly said, surprising everyone with the sudden firmness in her voice. We'd better make sure this ritual of yours works properly, hadn't we? From that point on, the dynamic changed. While not entirely convinced, the Order members began offering constructive suggestions rather than objections. Kingsley's expertise in ritual magic proved particularly valuable, while Moody's paranoid thoroughness helped identify potential vulnerabilities in their plan. By the time dawn broke, they had refined the ritual further and established a tentative cooperative framework. The Order would help secure the necessary components and provide support for the final confrontation, while Harry and Wednesday would lead the ritual itself, being the most familiar with its intricacies. As the meeting concluded and the Order members prepared to leave with Lupin to brief the rest, Molly pulled Harry aside for a private word. She's not what I expected, she admitted, glancing toward Wednesday, who was discussing some final detail with Kingsley. When Remus said you were working with an Addams, well, their reputation precedes them. She's special, Harry said simply. Brilliant, focused, and strangely moral in her own way. She's taught me more about magic in 2 months than I learned in 6 years at Hogwarts. Molly patted his cheek affectionately. I can see that. And more importantly, I can see how you look at each other. Harry felt himself flush. Is it that obvious? Only to someone who's raised 7 children, Molly smiled. Just promise me you'll be careful, Harry. Not because she's an Addams, but because any magic powerful enough to destroy you-know-who is dangerous to its wielders as well. I promise, Harry assured her. We're taking every precaution. After the Order departed, Harry found Wednesday in the library, reviewing the modifications they'd agreed upon. She didn't look up as he entered, but he knew she was aware of his presence. They're surprisingly practical, your Order friends, she commented. Once they moved past their tedious moral panic. Moody especially, Harry agreed, sitting across from her. I think he might actually respect you. A mutual sentiment, though I'd never admit it to him. She finally looked up from her notes. You realize they'll try to take control of the operation now that they're involved. Harry nodded. I know. But we need their resources, and having them on board reduces the risk of interference at a critical moment. Pragmatic, Wednesday approved. Perhaps my influence hasn't been entirely wasted. A comfortable silence fell between them as they both contemplated the events of the past few days. Finally, Harry broached the subject he'd been thinking about since her conversation with Molly. Did you mean what you said? About having a personal interest in my survival? Wednesday set down her quill, meeting his eyes directly. I don't say things I don't mean, Potter. It would be inefficient. It's just. Harry hesitated. You've never said anything like that before. The question wasn't asked before, she replied simply. Then, with uncharacteristic hesitation, she added, does it disturb you? Harry couldn't help but smile. No. Actually, it's one of the nicest things anyone's ever said to me. How depressing for you, Wednesday observed, though the corner of her mouth twitched upward slightly. Your standards for emotional validation must be abysmal. Probably, Harry admitted with a laugh. But coming from you, personal interest in my survival feels like high praise. Don't let it go to your head, Wednesday warned, though without real sharpness. We still have a Dark Lord to defeat and a complex ritual to perfect. Of course. Harry sobered, returning his attention to their plans. The Order raised some valid points about the timing. If we can coordinate with the lunar cycle as well as the solar alignment. They worked through the day, refining and strengthening their ritual. The Addams family continued to provide support, from Grandmama's specialized potions to Pugsley's surprisingly useful insights into explosive magical catalysts. That night, as they took a rare break to walk through the family graveyard under a waning moon, Harry found himself reflecting on the strange journey that had brought him here. From desperate Horcrux hunter to partner of an Addams, wielder of ancient magic, and architect of Voldemort's potential downfall. What happens after? He asked suddenly. If we succeed, I mean. Wednesday considered the question with her usual careful precision. Conventional narrative structure would suggest a period of celebration followed by integration into a new normal state. That's not what I meant, Harry pressed gently. What happens with us? She was silent for several steps, her pale face ghostly in the moonlight. The Addams family has numerous magical research projects that could benefit from your particular experiences. The interaction between Horcrux magic and your mother's sacrificial protection, for instance, presents fascinating theoretical possibilities. Harry smiled, recognizing her indirect invitation. Are you asking me to stay with you after all this is over? I'm merely pointing out that our partnership has proven mutually beneficial and could continue to be so under different circumstances, Wednesday replied, her tone perfectly neutral despite the significance of her words. I'd like that, Harry said softly. To continue our partnership. In whatever form it takes. Wednesday didn't respond verbally, but her hand found his in the darkness, cool fingers intertwining with his own with surprising gentleness. For her, it was an unprecedented gesture of affection. They walked in companionable silence through the cemetery, surrounded by generations of Addamses who had embraced darkness without succumbing to evil. Harry found it strangely comforting, a reminder that power and morality could coexist, that one could wield ancient, feared magic while remaining true to one's own moral compass. As they returned to the mansion, a message awaited them from the Order, intelligence confirming Voldemort had relocated to Malfoy Manor, apparently preparing for a major offensive against the Ministry itself. The timing works, Wednesday noted, checking their astronomical charts. The solar-lunar alignment we need occurs in 3 days. If Voldemort remains at the manor, we can implement the ritual as planned. And if he moves? Harry asked. Wednesday's lips curved in a rare smile. Then we make him come to us. The final pieces of their plan fell into place over the next 48 hours. Order members secured rare components they needed, including a sphinx feather freely given and water from the lake at Hogwarts, both necessary to strengthen the connection to Voldemort's past. Meanwhile, the Addams family prepared their contribution, a set of ancient obsidian daggers for channeling the ritual energy, and a potion so complex and disturbing in its ingredients that even Wednesday refused to detail its contents to the Order representatives. Some knowledge is best left undescribed to those unprepared for its implications, was all she would say when questioned by a suspicious Moody. The night before their planned implementation, Harry couldn't sleep. The enormity of what they were attempting, a ritual that could permanently end the most dangerous dark wizard of the age, weighed heavily on him. After hours of restless tossing, he gave up and made his way to the observatory tower. He found Wednesday already there, seated cross-legged at the center of their ritual diagram, eyes closed in deep concentration. Trouble sleeping? She asked without opening her eyes. How did you know it was me? Your footsteps are distinctive. Hesitant yet determined, like someone perpetually caught between caution and action. She opened her eyes, regarding him calmly. Besides, few others would approach this chamber at this hour. Harry sat across from her, careful not to disturb the intricate chalk lines of the diagram. I keep thinking about everything that could go wrong. A waste of mental energy, Wednesday observed. We've accounted for all reasonable variables. Beyond that, excessive worry serves no practical function. Easy for you to say, Harry replied with a hint of frustration. You always seem so certain. Wednesday was quiet for a moment, studying him with unusual intensity. I experience doubt, Potter. I simply don't indulge it. Doubt without action is merely fear wearing academic clothing. The insight surprised him. So what do you do instead? I acknowledge the uncertainty, identify what can be controlled, and proceed accordingly. She tilted her head slightly. Currently, I am uncertain whether our ritual will successfully bind all Horcruxes simultaneously, given the unique nature of your connection to Voldemort. But uncertainty doesn't negate the necessity of action. Harry nodded slowly, finding her practical approach oddly comforting. And if it fails? Then we implement contingency plan Theta, involving individually targeting each Horcrux through a modified version of the tracking spell we initially used. She paused, then added with characteristic deadpan, significantly more tedious, but theoretically viable. Despite his anxiety, Harry laughed. You really do have an answer for everything. Not everything, Wednesday admitted, surprising him again. Some questions remain persistently resistant to logical analysis. Such as? She met his eyes directly. Why your continued survival matters to me beyond its practical utility in defeating Voldemort. The admission hung in the air between them, more meaningful for its rarity. Wednesday Addams didn't often acknowledge emotional uncertainties. Maybe some things don't need logical analysis, Harry suggested softly. An unsatisfying conclusion, she replied, though without her usual sharpness. On impulse, Harry reached across the ritual diagram, careful not to smudge any lines, and took her hand. She didn't pull away. Whatever happens tomorrow, he said, I'm glad I met you, Wednesday Addams. She looked at their joined hands with an expression of mild curiosity. Despite the near-death experiences, exposure to forbidden magic, and alienation from your former allies? Because of all of that, Harry corrected. You showed me a different way to fight. A different way to understand magic. I needed that. Wednesday's pale features softened almost imperceptibly. You were adequate as a student. Less resistant to new concepts than I anticipated. Your willingness to question established magical doctrine was unexpectedly refreshing. From Wednesday, it was practically effusive praise. They sat together in companionable silence as the night deepened around them, two very different people united by common purpose and uncommon understanding. Whatever the next day might bring, they would face it as partners, the boy who lived and the Addams girl who had taught him that darkness itself wasn't the enemy. Chapter 3, Fatally Fantastic Finale. Dawn broke over the Addams mansion with an appropriately blood-red sky. Harry stood at the observatory window, watching as crimson light spilled across the family graveyard. Behind him, Wednesday meticulously arranged ritual components on a black velvet cloth. Your order friends are arriving, she noted without looking up. Grandmother just activated the perimeter warning system. Harry turned from the window. How can you tell? The screams are distinctive. Wednesday placed an ornate silver dagger at the center of the cloth. Warnings for friends sound like someone being tickled to death. Warnings for enemies sound like someone being flayed alive. That's practical, Harry decided. Wednesday nodded, completely serious. The Addams family has always valued efficient communication. The last 12 hours have been a whirlwind of preparation. After finalizing their ritual design, they'd sent word to the Order about their plan to lure Voldemort into a confrontation. The response had been predictably mixed. Moody and Kingsley supported the aggressive approach, while others expressed concern about the risk of forcing a direct confrontation. Now, as the Order members arrived to coordinate the final details, Harry felt a strange calm settle over him. After months of hunting Horcruxes, learning forbidden magic, and fighting alongside Wednesday, he was ready to end this. Wednesday finished her preparations and stood, smoothing her perpetually black dress. Today she wore what appeared to be funeral attire complete with a small veil, which she'd explained was traditional Addams battle wear. "Remember," she said as they prepared to join the others, "no matter what objections they raise, we maintain control of the ritual components. The magical theory is too complex for most of them to grasp, and improvisation would be catastrophic." Harry nodded. "They provide support and containment, we handle the core ritual." "Precisely." Wednesday handed him a small vial of swirling silver liquid. "Drink this before we begin. It will sharpen your magical focus and provide some protection against psychic backlash." Harry pocketed the vial without question. Over the past months, he'd consumed dozens of Wednesday's strange concoctions, each more effective than the last. His trust in her alchemical skills was absolute, even if some ingredients remained purposefully unidentified. They descended to the main hall, where the Addams family was enthusiastically greeting Order members with their unique brand of hospitality. "And this is our favorite thumbscrew collection," Gomez was explaining to a horrified-looking Arthur Weasley. 15th century Spanish Inquisition, mostly. Exquisite craftsmanship. Nearby, Morticia was showing Tonks a collection of poisonous flowers, while Pugsley attempted to interest Kingsley in what appeared to be homemade explosives. Uncle Fester had cornered Moody and was comparing notes on paranoid security measures, a conversation that seemed to be the only one going smoothly. "Harry!" Molly rushed over when she spotted him. "Thank goodness. Are you certain about this plan? It seems incredibly dangerous to deliberately provoke you-know-who." "We're past the point of caution, Mrs. Weasley," Harry replied gently. "Voldemort's gathering forces for a major offensive. If we don't act now, we'll be fighting on his terms. Besides," Wednesday added, "provoking megalomaniacs is elementary. Their ego makes them predictable." Moody limped over, apparently having escaped Fester's enthusiastic demonstration of electrified doorknobs. "The girl's right. Dark Lords are all the same, wave something they want in front of them, they'll come running without checking for traps." "And what exactly are you planning to wave in front of him?" Kingsley asked, joining their circle. Harry exchanged a glance with Wednesday, who nodded slightly. "The Mortis Stone," he said. "An Addams family heirloom that predates the Deathly Hallows. Rumored to grant control over death itself." Several Order members gasped. Moody's magical eye spun wildly. "Such an artifact would be irresistible to Voldemort," Lupin observed. "But using a genuine artifact of such power as bait seems extraordinarily risky." "It would be," Wednesday agreed, "if we were using the Real Stone. We've created a convincing replica," Harry explained. "Enchanted to emit the same magical signature as the genuine article, but designed to absorb and destabilize any attempt to access its power." "A magical honeypot," Kingsley said with dawning comprehension. "Clever. The location is equally important," Wednesday continued. "We've selected the ruins of Cadmus Peveril's original dwelling. The connection to the Deathly Hallows will add credibility to our bait. And make Voldemort overconfident," Moody added approvingly. "He considers himself Peveril's true heir." As they discussed the tactical details, Harry noticed Molly watching him with lingering concern. He moved to reassure her. "We've taken every precaution, Mrs. Weasley. The risk is calculated." "It's not just the plan I'm worried about, dear," she admitted quietly. "It's what comes after. If this works, and you-know-who is truly gone, what will you do?" The question caught Harry off guard. He'd been so focused on defeating Voldemort that he'd given little thought to life beyond that goal. He began, then glanced toward Wednesday, who was explaining some arcane detail of their ritual to a fascinated Kingsley. "I have some ideas." Molly followed his gaze and sighed softly. "I see. Just promise me you'll visit the burrow occasionally. You'll always have family with us, no matter what path you choose." The simple acceptance in her words touched Harry deeply. "I promise." Their planning session continued throughout the morning, with Order members assigned to specific roles in the coming confrontation. Kingsley would coordinate with trusted ministry contacts to ensure no interference from official channels. Moody would lead the containment team, preventing Death Eaters from escaping once the battle began. Others would maintain protective wards around the ritual site itself. By midday, most details were finalized. The trap would be set that evening, with information about the Mortis Stone strategically leaked through channels known to reach Voldemort's inner circle. The confrontation would likely occur near midnight, when the astronomical alignment strengthened their ritual's potential. As the Order members departed to make their own preparations, Dumbledore's portrait, which someone had brought from Hogwarts, requested a private word with Harry. The animated painting had remained uncharacteristically quiet throughout their planning, observing with thoughtful eyes. Harry approached the portrait, which had been propped against a bookshelf in the Addams library. "Professor." "Harry, my boy," Dumbledore's painted form said gently. "I must express my concerns about the path you've chosen." Harry steeled himself for criticism. "I understand your reservations, Professor, but—" No, Dumbledore interrupted, raising a painted hand. "You misunderstand me. My concern is not with your methods, which show remarkable innovation and courage. My concern is whether you fully comprehend what awaits at the conclusion of this journey." "You mean defeating Voldemort?" Harry asked, confused. "I mean the aftermath," Dumbledore clarified. "Victory often proves more challenging than battle, Harry. The question becomes not how to survive, but how to live." Harry considered this. "I've never really thought beyond defeating him. It's been my entire purpose for so long." "Precisely my concern," Dumbledore's portrait smiled sadly. "Purpose sustains us through darkness, but when that purpose is fulfilled, one must find new meaning." Harry glanced toward the door where Wednesday had exited earlier. "I think I might have found something worth exploring." Dumbledore's painted eyes twinkled. "Ah, Miss Addams. A most unexpected alliance, yet one I find increasingly fascinating. She has shown you aspects of magic I regrettably neglected in your education. You're not disappointed that I've been learning what many would consider dark arts?" "Harry," Dumbledore's portrait leaned forward, "in my long life, I learned that our conventional classifications of magic often reflect political convenience rather than genuine moral distinction. Intent matters more than incantation. The Addams family has practiced their unique magic for centuries without succumbing to the corrupting influence that typically accompanies such power." This acceptance from his mentor's memory, even in portrait form, lifted a weight from Harry's shoulders he hadn't realized he was carrying. "Thank you, Professor. I merely speak truth, my boy. Now, about your ritual, there is one element I believe you may have overlooked. The sympathetic connection between your blood in Voldemort's veins and your own magical core. It creates potential for dangerous feedback during your binding spell." Harry listened intently as Dumbledore's portrait suggested a modification to their ritual that would better protect him from magical backlash. When he later shared these insights with Wednesday, she acknowledged their value with a rare nod of approval. "Dumbledore was more knowledgeable than I gave him credit for," she admitted. "This adjustment strengthens the containment aspect significantly." The remainder of the day passed in focused preparation. The Addams family transformed their ritual components into portable form, while Harry and Wednesday rehearsed the complex incantations they would need to perform under pressure. As evening approached, they gathered in the entrance hall for a final review before departing. The Addamses had dressed for battle in their own distinctive way, Gomez in what appeared to be a Victorian dueling outfit, Morticia in flowing black robes that moved like living shadows, Grandmama wearing a shawl made from what Harry desperately hoped wasn't actual human hair. "The decoy has been placed," Pugsley reported, returning from his assignment. "And I added some explosive surprises around the perimeter, just in case." His grin suggested these surprises went well beyond standard defensive measures. "Excellent work, old man." Gomez clapped his son on the shoulder. Nothing says, "Welcome to battle," like unexpected detonations. "The leak has been successfully planted," Morticia added. My contact at Borgin and Burke's was most cooperative once I reminded him of our family's contribution to his more exclusive inventory. "And Lurch has prepared the transportation," Wednesday noted as the towering butler appeared, carrying a collection of ornate items that Harry recognized as portkeys. "The order will meet us at the staging area," Harry confirmed, checking his watch. "We should leave within the hour to complete the ritual preparations before moonrise." Gomez stepped forward, unusually serious. "Before you go, a word." He placed a hand on Harry's shoulder and another on Wednesday's. "The Addams family has battled dark wizards since before Merlin drew breath. We've faced necromancers, liches, and would-be immortals with delusions of godhood. None have withstood the full might of our ancestral magic. What your father is trying to say," Morticia translated with a gentle smile, "is that we're enormously proud of you both. And also that we've prepared the family crypt, just in case," Grandmama added cheerfully. "The eastern plot has a lovely view of the swamp." "Mother," Morticia chided. "We agreed to remain positive about their survival prospects." "I am being positive," Grandmama protested. "I didn't mention the backup reanimation ritual at all." Wednesday closed her eyes briefly, the Addams equivalent of an exasperated eye roll. "We should leave now. The astronomical window is approaching, and punctuality matters in ritual magic." As they prepared to activate their portkeys, Harry felt a hand on his arm. He turned to find Pugsley looking at him with uncharacteristic seriousness. "Take care of my sister," the boy said quietly. "She pretends nothing hurts her, but that's not true." Harry nodded, surprised by the unexpected moment of brotherly concern. "I will." "Good," Pugsley brightened immediately. "Because if you don't, I've got 17 different ways to make your death look like a potions accident." Before Harry could respond to this cheerful threat, Wednesday rejoined them, and they activated their portkeys in synchronized sequence. The world spun in a blur of color before they landed on a windswept hillside. Before them stood the crumbling stone ruins of what had once been a modest dwelling, Cadmus Peveril's original home, now reduced to little more than a foundation and partial walls. Order members were already in position, establishing protective wards and concealment charms around the perimeter. Moody coordinated their efforts with gruff efficiency, his magical eye constantly scanning the horizon for threats. "Perimeters secure," he reported as Harry approached. "Anti-apparition wards extending half a mile in all directions. Anyone wants in or out, they'll have to do it on foot through our checkpoint." "Perfect," Harry nodded. "Any sign of activity yet?" "Nothing conclusive," Kingsley replied, joining them. "But our sources report unusual movement among known Death Eater sympathizers. The bait has definitely attracted attention." Wednesday was already directing the placement of ritual components, her efficiency matching Moody's as she transformed the ancient ruins into a precisely arranged magical workspace. The fake mortis stone, a convincing replica created by Gomez and Uncle Fester, sat on a pedestal at the center, emitting a subtle but detectable magical aura. "The stone's enchantments are active," Wednesday confirmed. "Any competent magical detection should register it as an artifact of extraordinary power." As darkness fell, they completed their preparations. The Order members took their positions, concealed but ready, while the Addams family integrated seamlessly into the defensive perimeter. Pugsley and Uncle Fester seemed particularly delighted with their assignment to manage explosive countermeasures. In the center of it all, Harry and Wednesday made final adjustments to their ritual circle. The complex array of runes, potion vials, and focus crystals formed a pattern that would channel and amplify their spell once activated. "It's time," Wednesday said as the moon rose over the distant hills. She handed Harry the vial she'd given him earlier. "Drink." Harry uncorked the silvery liquid and swallowed it in one gulp. It tasted of starlight and shadow, if such things had flavor, and immediately his magical senses sharpened dramatically. The ley lines running beneath the ruins became visible to him as threads of golden light, while the magical signatures of everyone nearby manifested as distinct auras of varying intensity. "Whoa," he breathed, blinking as his perception adjusted. "That's intense." "Essence of clarity," Wednesday explained. "Enhanced with moonstone and sphinx tears. It temporarily aligns your magical perception with the fundamental patterns of reality." Before Harry could ask for clarification on this rather profound statement, a warning signal flashed. 3 red sparks shot into the night sky from the northern perimeter. "They're coming," Harry whispered, suddenly alert. Wednesday nodded, her face serene despite the danger approaching. "Right on schedule. Dark Lords are nothing if not predictable in their pursuit of power." They took their positions on opposite sides of the ritual circle, the fake mortis stone between them. All around, Order members and Addamses tensed in anticipation, wands and more exotic weapons at the ready. The first sign of the approaching enemy was a drop in temperature. Frost crept across the ground, and their breath began to fog in the suddenly frigid air. "Dementors," Harry murmured. "He sent them first." Sure enough, dark shapes materialized at the edge of their perimeter, gliding, hooded figures that radiated despair. Dozens of them, forming a writhing black cloud that advanced steadily toward the ruins. "Patron uses, now!" Kingsley commanded, and silver light erupted from multiple positions as Order members cast their protective spirits. Harry raised his wand to join them, but Wednesday caught his wrist. "Conserve your strength for the ritual," she advised. "Besides, there's a more efficient approach." She pulled a small silver whistle from her pocket and blew a single, silent note. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ground beneath the advancing Dementors erupted as pale, skeletal hands burst from the soil, grasping at the hooded figure's robes. "Addams family graveyard guardians," Wednesday explained, noting Harry's surprised expression. "Grandmother transferred a few dozen to this location earlier. They're quite territorial about their burial grounds." The effect was immediate and startling. The Dementors, unused to being physically attacked, faltered in confusion as animated skeletal remains dragged at them from below. Their orderly advance collapsed into chaos. Taking advantage of the distraction, Harry and Wednesday began the first phase of their ritual, a protective enchantment that would shield them from interference once the main battle began. They moved in perfect synchronization, their weeks of practice evident as they traced complicated patterns in the air while chanting in an ancient language that made the air itself shiver. As they completed the protective barrier, a new threat appeared. Death Eaters operate at the edge of their wards, unable to penetrate further but forming a menacing circle around the site. Leading them was Lucius Malfoy, his silver mask gleaming in the moonlight. "Potter," he called, voice magically amplified. "We know you're here. Surrender the Mortis Stone, and the Dark Lord may show mercy." No one responded to this transparent lie. Instead, Moody gave a signal, and the Order's counterattack began. Spellfire erupted from concealed positions, catching several Death Eaters by surprise. Simultaneously, Pugsley activated his surprises, the ground around the perimeter exploding in precisely coordinated bursts that sent Death Eaters flying. The battle escalated quickly. Death Eaters responded with deadly curses, while Order members maintained disciplined defense. The night air filled with multicolored light as spells crossed and clashed. Through it all, Harry and Wednesday continued their ritual preparation, protected by the barrier they'd erected. They could see but not hear the battle raging around them, a strange, silent tableau of violence viewed through a translucent veil of magic. "Second phase," Wednesday directed calmly, unperturbed by the chaos. "Blood connection activation." Harry nodded, drawing a ritual dagger across his palm. 3 drops of his blood fell onto the central stone, which absorbed them eagerly. Wednesday added a potion that sizzled on contact with his blood, releasing spirals of silver vapor. Outside their protective bubble, the battle intensified. The Death Eaters had brought giants, massive figures that loomed at the edges of the firelight, hurling boulders toward the defenders. Order members scattered, regrouping in smaller units to target the lumbering threats. Meanwhile, the Addams family demonstrated why dark wizards had learned to avoid them throughout history. Gomez dueled 3 Death Eaters simultaneously, his wand in one hand and a rapier in the other, laughing manically as he drove them back. Morticia stood calmly in the midst of combat, gesturing gracefully as the very shadows came alive around her, engulfing opponents in suffocating darkness. Uncle Fester had somehow climbed atop one of the giants and appeared to be attempting to redirect its aggression toward the Death Eaters, while Grandmama threw potion vials that exploded into everything from swarms of flesh-eating butterflies to localized rain clouds that poured acid. The connection is established, Wednesday noted as the vapor from their ritual formed a spiraling column above the stone. We need the final catalyst. Harry checked the moon's position. Almost time. Just a few more minutes until optimal alignment. A sudden commotion outside their barrier caught their attention. The Death Eaters were falling back, creating a path through their ranks. A tall, pale figure in flowing black robes glided forward. Voldemort, Harry whispered. The Dark Lord had finally arrived, his serpentine features visible even at a distance. Nagini slithered at his feet, the living Horcrux they'd anticipated would accompany him. Perfect. The battle paused as Voldemort raised his hand for silence. Even from within their barrier, Harry could feel the dark wizard's magic, cold, corrupted, yet undeniably powerful. Now, Wednesday said, her voice steady despite the palpable menace approaching their position. The final phase. Are you ready? Harry nodded, his focus absolute thanks to the clarity potion. Together. They began the culminating incantation, their voices blending in perfect harmony as they channeled power into the ritual circle. The runes carved around them ignited with blue-white fire, while the crystals positioned at cardinal points pulsed with increasing intensity. Outside, Voldemort had noticed their protective barrier. His expression darkened as he realized something unexpected was occurring within. He raised his wand, sending a blast of pure magical force against their shield. The barrier shuddered but held. Wednesday didn't even flinch, her concentration unbroken as she completed her portion of the spell. Harry matched her focus, drawing on every lesson she'd taught him about precision and intent. Voldemort's attack intensified, joined by spells from his inner circle who had regrouped around him. The combined assault made their protective barrier flicker dangerously. Maintain focus, Wednesday instructed calmly. The backlash when it fails will fuel our ritual. She was right. When their shield finally shattered under Voldemort's onslaught, the released energy didn't dissipate but flowed into their ritual circle, amplifying the building power. Voldemort stepped forward, red eyes fixed on the glowing stone between them. Harry Potter, he hissed. Always interfering. Always failing. Harry didn't respond to the taunt, maintaining his position and continuing the ritual gestures Wednesday had drilled into him. Every moment they kept Voldemort focused on them was another moment their spell grew stronger. And what's this? Voldemort's gaze shifted to Wednesday. An Addams, if I'm not mistaken. Your family has a reputation for unusual magic. Wednesday regarded him with her characteristic deadpan expression. And you have a reputation for tedious monologuing. Shall we skip to the relevant part? Voldemort's lipless mouth twisted in anger. Insolent child. You think your family's parlor tricks can challenge Lord Voldemort? I, who have gone further along the path to immortality than any wizard in history. Further. Wednesday raised an eyebrow. Or just more clumsily. Splitting one's soul is hardly innovative. The Obsidian dynasty was doing it millennia ago with far more elegance. This unexpected critique seemed to actually unsettle Voldemort. His eyes narrowed dangerously. What do you know of such matters? Enough to recognize flawed execution, Wednesday replied, her hands continuing their subtle movements as she spoke. Soul magic requires precision. Your approach was blunt. While she kept Voldemort distracted with this critique of his life's work, Harry completed the penultimate sequence of their ritual. The fake Mortis stone was now pulsing with energy, drawing Voldemort's attention back to it. Enough games, the Dark Lord snarled, raising his wand. Give me the stone, or die painfully. Neither option appeals to us, Wednesday replied. We propose a third alternative. At her signal, Harry slammed his hand down on the final rune. The ritual circle exploded with light, and a beam of concentrated magic shot upward from the stone, parting the clouds above. Simultaneously, similar beams erupted from the ground at 7 different points around Voldemort, each corresponding to the location of a Horcrux that their tracking spell had identified. What is this? Voldemort demanded, sudden fear breaking through his confident facade. What have you done? Soul binding, Wednesday explained conversationally, as though discussing the weather. We're reconnecting what you so carelessly fragmented. Voldemort's eyes widened in genuine alarm. He tried to step back but found himself frozen in place as tendrils of magic wrapped around him, connecting him to the beams of light. It's impossible, he hissed. My Horcruxes are protected, were hidden, Harry corrected, maintaining his position as the ritual reached its crescendo. We found them all. And now, they're all connected again, to you. Around them, the battle had resumed. Death Eaters fought desperately to reach their master, while Order members and Addamses held them at bay. Through the chaos, Harry caught glimpses of extraordinary magic, Morticia commanding plants to entangle enemies, Gomez dueling with impossible speed and precision, Grandmama hurling curses that made hardened Death Eaters scream in terror. But the center of the storm remained Harry, Wednesday, and Voldemort, locked in magical combat that transcended conventional dueling. The Dark Lord struggled against the binding spell, pouring his considerable power into breaking free. The air crackled with conflicting energies as his magic clashed with their ritual. The connection is unstable, Wednesday noted, sweat beading on her pale forehead as she fought to maintain control. His will is fighting the binding. Then let's give him something else to fight, Harry replied. He stepped forward, drawing Voldemort's attention directly to him. Tom Riddle, he called, using the name he knew Voldemort despised. You took my blood by force. Now I'm taking it back. Harry thrust his hand into the central beam of light, allowing his blood, the same blood that flowed in Voldemort's reconstructed body, to resonate with the binding spell. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Voldemort screamed as the connection strengthened, the magical bindings tightening around him. The soul fragments are aligning, Wednesday confirmed, her eyes tracking the magical energies only she could fully perceive. Nagini first, she's closest. Indeed, the great snake writhed in agony as her portion of Voldemort's soul was pulled from her body, manifesting as a dark mist that flowed along the beam of light toward its original owner. One by one, the distant Horcruxes yielded their fragments, from Hogwarts, from Gringotts, from the hidden places where they'd been secreted away. Each return made Voldemort howl with rage and pain, his carefully constructed immortality unraveling before his eyes. You cannot do this, he raged, his magic lashing out in desperate fury. I am Lord Voldemort. I am immortal. You're neither a lord nor immortal, Wednesday corrected calmly. You're just a wizard who failed to understand the fundamental principles of soul magic. With each returning fragment, Voldemort's appearance changed subtly. His inhuman features shifted, hints of his original humanity reasserting themselves as his soul gradually reknit. It wasn't healing, the damage he'd done to himself was too severe for that, but it was reunification. Final phase, Wednesday announced as the last visible soul fragment returned. Judgment binding. This was the most dangerous part of their ritual, the moment when all fragments would be locked together, preventing any future separation. It required perfect synchronization and immense magical power. Harry and Wednesday began the final incantation together, their voices rising above the battle still raging around them. The ritual circle pulsed with blinding light as they channeled their combined will through it. Voldemort made one last, desperate attempt to break free. He poured everything he had into a massive magical surge that shattered their ritual stones and sent shockwaves across the battlefield. For a terrible moment, Harry feared they'd failed. The connection wavered, the binding spell fluctuating dangerously. Then Wednesday did something unexpected. She stepped forward and grasped Harry's hand, intertwining their fingers as she had that night in the graveyard. Together, she said simply. The touch stabilized their magic, creating a circuit between them that reinforced the ritual. Power flowed from one to the other and back again, amplifying with each cycle. No! Voldemort screamed, sensing his defeat approaching. I cannot be bound by children. Not children, Harry corrected, feeling strength surge through him. Partners. With a final, synchronized gesture, they completed the binding spell. The beams of light converged on Voldemort's chest, driving all the soul fragments back into his body at once. He fell to his knees, overwhelmed by the sudden integrity of a soul he'd spent decades mutilating. For a moment, the battlefield fell silent as everyone watched the Dark Lord struggle with his newly reunited soul. When he looked up, his face had changed, more human, yet somehow more terrible for it, as the weight of his crime settled fully upon him for the first time in decades. What have you done to me? He whispered, horror in his now human eyes. Made you whole, Harry answered. Made you mortal. Made you vulnerable, Wednesday added. They raised their wands together, but before they could cast the final spell, a green light flashed from the side. Voldemort crumpled, hit squarely in the chest with a killing curse. Behind him stood Neville Longbottom, his face set in grim determination. That was for my parents, Neville said quietly. And for everyone else he destroyed. The battlefield erupted in chaos as Death Eaters reacted to their master's fall. Some fought more desperately, while others attempted to flee. The Order and the Addams family pressed their advantage, systematically containing the remaining threats. In the center of it all, Harry and Wednesday stood beside Voldemort's body, their ritual complete though not quite as they'd planned. Well, Wednesday observed after a moment. That was anticlimactic. Harry couldn't help it, he laughed, tension breaking as the absurdity of her comment hit him. Only you would call the defeat of the darkest wizard in a century anticlimactic. I was expecting at least some kind of dramatic final exchange, she explained. Perhaps a profound realization on his part about the futility of seeking immortality through fragmentation. Sorry to disappoint, Neville said as he joined them, still looking slightly shocked at his own actions. It just seemed like the right moment. Your timing was impeccable, Wednesday assured him. The soul binding had just completed. He was fully mortal when you struck. Around them, the battle was winding down. Most Death Eaters had surrendered or fled, and Order members were beginning cleanup operations. The Addams family gathered near them, remarkably unscathed despite being in the thick of combat. Magnificent performance. Gomez declared, clapping Harry on the shoulder hard enough to stagger him. That soul binding was textbook perfect. Wasn't it marvelous, Morticia? Absolutely breathtaking, darling, Morticia agreed, somehow looking immaculate despite the battle. Wednesday, your control of the ritual energies made your ancestors proud. I'm certain I felt great-grandmother Callista's spirit applauding from beyond. Grandmama prodded Voldemort's body with her toe. Not much left to reanimate, she noted disappointedly. Soul magic always leaves the corpse so depleted. Hardly worth the effort. Mother, please, Morticia chided gently. Not everyone shares your interest in reanimation projects. As the Addamses discussed the finer points of necromantic limitations, Order members approached to secure Voldemort's remains. Kingsley, now taking charge of the scene, looked exhausted but relieved. It's over, he said simply. After all this time, it's actually over. Harry nodded, the reality still settling in. What about the remaining Death Eaters? Moody's coordinating pursuit of those who fled, Kingsley replied. But without their leader, their organization will collapse quickly. The magical bindings you created ensure Voldemort can't return this time. As the immediate danger passed, Harry became aware of his own exhaustion. The ritual had drained him significantly, and now that adrenaline was fading, he felt lightheaded. Wednesday noticed immediately. Sit, she commanded, guiding him to a nearby stone. She produced a vial from somewhere in her dress. "Drink this. Rejuvenation elixir. More bat spleens and squid ink?" Harry asked weakly. "Phoenix tears and midnight blooming jasmine," she corrected. "Much more effective for magical exhaustion, though significantly less interesting." As Harry sipped the surprisingly sweet potion, energy gradually returning to his limbs, he watched the aftermath unfold around them. Order members securing prisoners. Addams is helpfully collecting dark artifacts from fallen Death Eaters. Healers tending to the wounded. "So," he said after a moment, "what now?" Wednesday considered the question with her usual careful precision. Conventional narrative structure would suggest celebration, followed by rebuilding, then eventually commemorative statues you'll find embarrassing. Harry laughed softly. "That's not what I meant." "I know." Wednesday sat beside him, her shoulder touching his, a rare voluntary proximity. "You're asking about us. About what happens to our partnership now that its primary objective has been achieved." "Yeah," Harry confirmed. "That." Wednesday was silent for a moment, watching as Uncle Fester enthusiastically demonstrated something explosive to an alarmed-looking ministry official who had just arrived. The Addams family mansion has 17 unused bedrooms, a fully equipped potions laboratory, and the most comprehensive private library of magical knowledge in the Western Hemisphere, she finally said. It also has excellent protective wards against unwanted journalists and fame-seekers. Harry smiled, recognizing the invitation hidden in her practical assessment. "Are you asking me to move in with you, Wednesday Addams?" "I'm merely pointing out logistical advantages of continuing our partnership in a structured environment," she replied, though the faintest hint of color touched her pale cheeks. "Besides, we've only explored approximately 12% of the grimoires in the East Wing. It would be inefficient to abandon such research prematurely." "When you put it that way, how could I refuse?" Harry said, taking her hand. "Though Mrs. Weasley made me promise to visit the burrow regularly." "Acceptable," Wednesday nodded. "Family connections should be maintained, even with those who display alarming levels of optimism and affection." As the cleanup continued around them, Morticia approached, a knowing smile on her lips as she observed their joined hands. "The ministry is arranging transportation for everyone back to London," she informed them. "But your father and I thought you might prefer to return to the mansion directly. You both need rest after such complex ritual work." "Thank you, Mother," Wednesday replied. "That would be preferable." Morticia produced an ornate silver hand mirror, their emergency portkey. "Whenever you're ready, children. Lurch is preparing a celebratory dinner. Something suitably momentous for the occasion." After she glided away to inform Gomez of their plans, Harry turned to Wednesday. "Should we say goodbye to the others first?" "Unnecessary," she decided. "Prolonged farewells are inefficient, and we'll see them again soon enough. The wizarding world won't leave its savior in peace for long." Harry grimaced at the thought of the attention that awaited him. "Maybe we should disappear for a while. Take some time to recover before facing all that. The mansion has an excellent reputation for making unwanted visitors disappear instead," Wednesday noted with the barest hint of a smile. "But a period of seclusion would be prudent. Perhaps we could continue your education in some of the more interesting branches of magic the Addams family has preserved." "I'd like that," Harry said sincerely. "Though maybe we could start with something that doesn't involve blood sacrifices or communing with the dead." "You've grown so much, yet remain disappointingly conventional in some respects," Wednesday sighed, though her tone lacked its usual sharpness. "Very well. We'll begin with theoretical applications of dimensional manipulation. Hardly any blood required at all." Harry laughed, the sound startling several nearby ministry officials who were still coming to terms with the Dark Lord's defeat. "Deal." As night deepened around the ancient ruins, they activated the portkey together. In a swirl of magic, they left behind the battlefield and the beginning of a new wizarding era, one they had helped create but didn't need to oversee. They arrived in the Addams mansion's entry hall, where Lurch waited with his usual stoic presence. He groaned a greeting that somehow conveyed both congratulations and dinner information. "Thank you, Lurch," Wednesday translated. "We'll join the family shortly." As the butler shuffled away, Harry and Wednesday found themselves alone in the flickering candlelight of the macabre entrance hall. Hunting trophies of dubious origin watched from the walls, while the ancestral Addams portraits observed with undisguised interest. "We did it," Harry said quietly, the reality still sinking in. "We actually did it." "Your surprise suggests a lack of confidence in our preparations," Wednesday observed. "The outcome was statistically probable given our methodical approach." "That's not," Harry began, then caught the faint twitch at the corner of her mouth that indicated she was teasing him. "You're making a joke. You, Wednesday Addams, are actually joking after we just defeated the darkest wizard of the century." "I contain multitudes," she replied dryly. "Besides, near-death experiences and ritual magic tend to affect one's usual behavioral patterns. It's temporary, I assure you." Harry stepped closer to her, suddenly serious. "What if I don't want it to be temporary? What if I like this side of you?" Wednesday regarded him steadily, her dark eyes unreadable. "What side would that be, exactly?" "The side that held my hand during the ritual. The side that stepped in front of a killing curse for me. The side that invited me to stay even though the hunt is over." Harry took her hand again, encouraged when she didn't pull away. "The side that cares, even though you try to hide it." For a long moment, Wednesday was silent, and Harry feared he'd overstepped. Then, with characteristic directness, she replied. "That's not a side, Potter. That's just me. Caring is inefficient, inconvenient, and apparently unavoidable where you're concerned." From Wednesday, it was practically a declaration of love. Harry's heart swelled. "I feel the same way," he said softly. "Inefficiently and inconveniently." "How terribly sentimental of us both," she noted, though she stepped closer until they were mere inches apart. "My ancestors would be mortified." "I can live with that," Harry murmured. When they kissed, it wasn't dramatic or passionate in the conventional sense. It was precise, deliberate, and perfect, just like everything Wednesday did. And when they separated, the faintest smile graced her usually impassive features. "Acceptable," she declared. "Though further practice may be required for optimal results." Harry laughed, joy bubbling up from somewhere deep inside him. "I'm willing to practice as much as necessary." "Your dedication to improvement is commendable," she replied, the smile lingering as she took his hand once more. "Come. The family will be waiting, and Grandmama's victory feasts are not to be missed, despite certain questionable ingredient choices." As they walked toward the dining room, Harry realized that for the first time in his life, he wasn't defined by prophecy, by destiny, or by Voldemort's shadow. The future stretched before him, strange, uncertain, and undoubtedly filled with Wednesday's peculiar brand of magic. He couldn't wait to see what came next. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.